This paladin is so despicable. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376, The Flesh and Blood God's Choice. In the eyes of the gods, the behavior of the elves is understandable. Although some are calculating, some are shameless, and some are unscrupulous. But fortunately, it is still within the normal range. But what is the other side doing? After these muscle men are wrapped in flesh and blood weapons, a bloody shadow appears behind them. Every time a flesh and blood believer kills a demon, the demon will be sucked and digested by the bloody shadow behind him, and then strengthen himself. You know, although the number of Poseidon believers is increasing, the blessing and improvement of the first batch of flesh and blood men have reached the upper limit. The flesh and blood weapons on their bodies are close to perfection, and the grenade guns and chainsaw swords are also condensed into shape, and the speed of killing enemies is close to perfection. Although the number of enemies killed is still increasing, the efficiency is gradually approaching the upper limit. This is why the elves can gradually catch up with them after they are promoted to the great elves and obtain a large number of magic weapons. After all, there are many great elves in the life god system who can directly engage in battle. As for the Poseidon believers, after entering the lost world, they still need to warm up and complete the flesh and blood armament before they can be considered to have reached the upper limit. If this continues, the Holy Light Court may be caught up by the opponent bit by bit. However, after the effect of the Poseidon's knife and fork was activated, this possibility disappeared. The phantoms behind the flesh and blood believers were none other than the flesh and blood Poseidon's clones. As the living demons were sacrificed one by one, the flesh and blood Poseidon's clones behind them became more and more solid, and the blessings they received became more and more powerful. Yes, it's God's choice. This is God's choice. Finally, among the gods in the audience, an old god recognized it. It's incredible. It can be used like this. It's really eye-opening. The gods next to them knew what God's choice meant, and they all questioned it. What do you mean? God's chosen? How is that possible? That's right. Where do so many gods chosen come from? The old god waved his scepter and argued, open your stupid eyes and see clearly. That is God's chosen. No, it should be said that every believer is becoming God's chosen. It is a common practice to select a believer to be God's chosen and bestow God's power. As you said, if every believer is selected as God's chosen and bestowed with divine power, first of all, the consumption is too great and the gods themselves cannot support it. Secondly, in the process of gambling, each blessing of God's chosen requires one opportunity of God's chosen. So even if 3 gods chosen are used to select God's chosen, only 3 gods chosen will appear. But the Holy Light Court chose to take a different approach. I don't know what method they used to give each believer a seed-like thing. Then, these believers killed crazily and sacrificed the flesh and blood of their enemies to the seeds attached to their bodies, making them grow stronger. When enough flesh and blood are sacrificed, these seeds will evolve into a complete halo of God's chosen. Another younger god slapped his forehead and said, I understand. It is equivalent to that the gods have granted them the quota for being chosen by God, but the divine power needed for being chosen by God needs to be earned through sacrifice. As long as enough enemies are killed, they can become chosen by God. Is this achievable? Another god analyzed. It's difficult. First of all, you have to be a god like the god of war or the god of flesh and blood, who can directly benefit from the war. Secondly, you have to have the ability to offer instant sacrifices and get instant feedback. If I'm not mistaken, this ability comes from the knife and fork of the sea god launched by the goddess of holy light just now. The god next to him sneered, you're kidding. This kind of crazy killing can still get blessings. The more you kill, the more blessings you get. This behavior will inevitably make believers lose their minds and fall into madness. At that time, their pathological beliefs will, in turn, affect the divinity of the gods. Eventually, the gods will go crazy together. Doing this kind of thing is simply suicide. But, why haven't they gone crazy yet? Yes, why? Not only the gods in the audience had this question, but also Ravdal of the god of life and the elf dragon god on the duel stage wanted to ask this question. Your behavior has become so crazy. Why haven't you gone crazy yet? If you don't go crazy again, we will go crazy. Wright seemed to see the other party's doubts and explained in a very considerate voice. It is real. I added the real to the divinity of the flesh and blood sea god. As soon as these words came out, the whole audience was silent, and the entire arena was deader than the morgue. All the gods looked at Wright with an unspeakable look. Even the judge in the sky couldn't help but turn his head. Are you sick? Ravdal couldn't hold it anymore. He grabbed the railing with a flushed face, yelled without any image, and spit out saliva. At this moment, all the anger he had accumulated since the gambling fight was vented. You are a holy light god. How can you summon the followers of the sea god? It's fine that you summoned the followers of the sea god. But are you a real sea god? Whose sea god is like yours? And what do the followers of the sea god have to do with the sea? Is there any? No. Not a hair at all. I won't say these. I won't say them. Please translate for me. Why is there truth in the divinity of the sea god? Translate. The god who manages the sea. Why does he need truth? Divinity. Why? Wright didn't even look at him and raised his hand to the judge in the sky. Mr. Judge, the other party used inappropriate words and insulted us. I apply to expel him from the arena. We have received a complaint that the life god system did have excessive language behavior and was given a mute treatment. Raftel was like a chicken with its neck pinched, unable to make a sound. He stuck his neck and blushed and danced with anxiety, almost exploding on the spot. Finally, panting heavily, he finally sat back down after being comforted by his companions, but his bloodshot eyes were still staring at Wright. Wright looked at the beautiful goddesses around him with some innocence. Well, adding truth to the divinity of the sea god, is it really so difficult to understand? Actually, I'm curious too. Why did you add truth? Is there a possibility that the essential divinity of its existence is truth, and the sea god is just a part-time job? Hearing Wright's explanation, the goddesses around him suddenly realized it makes sense. While talking, the number of sea gods followers in the Lost Land has exceeded 3,000. After all, it was a snowball-like surge, and the increase was hundreds and hundreds later. And after this period of communion ceremony, among the 3,000 believers, there are as many as 1,500 flesh and blood gods. That fighting power made the gods' eyelids jump. They had a feeling that there were not enough demons in this plane for them to kill. And Heretic of the life god system did not intend to sit and wait for death. He raised his hand towards the judge. Arbitrator, I want to apply for the heroic spirit to descend. The ruling was passed. Afra panicked when she heard it. Light, what should we do? The other party is going to use the heroic spirit. We don't have heroic spirits in the sea god system. Jonah didn't know much about these things and asked curiously, are heroic spirits very powerful? Probably similar to demigods. One person is equivalent to an army. Then, what should we do? Light hooked his finger. Continue to draw cards. Chapter 377. Demons also convert. Subscribe. With a strong light descending from the sky, the Supreme Elf King came to the Lost Land. He is an extremely powerful hero and the god of life. His deeds have become a legend passed down from generation to generation by the elves. Even in different worlds, the elves still vaguely know that their tribe once had a particularly amazing king who wrote a poem of supreme glory. This honor even makes many gods in the god of life envious. After all, if this effect falls on them, then they don't need to worry about the power of faith anymore. The appearance of the Supreme Elf King greatly boosted the morale of the elves. At the same time, his inherent effect as a hero was activated. Under the blessing of the Elf King, thousands of great elves around them had their life force surging, and they actually advanced directly to become high-level elves of the golden species. If such behavior happened in an ordinary gambling fight, it would definitely be condemned by other onlookers. In any case, this is too much. Even if the elves can be promoted continuously, it is a bit too much to be promoted 3 times in a gambling fight. But this time, the gods in the audience were unusually calm. Everyone felt that it was very reasonable. On the other side, there were 1,500, 2,300 gods chosen. Even if these 1,000 great elves were to advance to high-level elves, they could not compare with the 2,500 gods chosen. In other words, with a population of 2,800, Could the golden race really compete with the gods chosen? That was still an unknown. After all, the gods chosen were second only to the heroic spirit. The gods chosen champion was even more known as the hero of the time. With more than 3,000 gods chosen, the possibility of a gods chosen champion emerging was not low. Looking at the sea gods believers who were all gods chosen in the Lost Land, the gods in the audience began to waver. At first, they thought that the life god system was bullying the holy light god court. After all, the two were not at the same level in terms of strength or number. But after watching the first gambling fight, everyone was more inclined to sympathize with the life god system. What medicine did you take wrong to dare to mess with such a living father? Fortunately, the appearance of the Elf King did save some of the decline to a certain extent. Under the leadership of the king, the high-level elves began to fight back bravely, trying to kill more demons in exchange for points to summon more high-level elves. Their advantage is still the reserve of high-level arms, unlike the Holy Light Court, which can only be strengthened by killing from the beginning of Black Iron. And the Supreme Elf King is indeed as rumored, with the super strength of one person to fight an army, and it helps the elves to quickly expand the results of the war. Just when the situation was very good, the sky of the Lost Land was suddenly dyed red with blood. It turned out that just now, Afra also applied for the second god's gift, but she didn't have any heroic spirits in her hand. After all, the flesh and blood sea god is still young, and almost all of the first batch of believers are still alive, not to mention any heroic spirits. But fortunately, the Flesh and Blood Sea God cult, the predecessor of the Flesh and Blood Sea God cult, has the organizational structure that the Ancestor Wright personally divided in the past and has been thriving over the years. And the card that Afra just threw was to summon the 5 heads of the Flesh and Blood cult to descend on the Lost World. The Flesh and Blood cult has many halls. Each hall has a hall master. They have the flesh and blood seeds bestowed by Wright himself. Under the transformation of the flesh and blood seeds, the hall masters have strong bodies, different from ordinary people and ordinary gang members. The difference between the hall master and the flesh and blood believers is probably similar to the difference between the flesh and blood believers and mortals. And most importantly, in addition to the destructive body, the hall masters also have a full set of fighting skills such as the 8th set of radio gymnastics and military killing fist taught by the founder Wright himself. When the hall master level believers come, it is the beginning of the fury of the god of flesh and blood. 5 sturdy figures stood in front of the 3,000 gods, and their momentum forced the flesh and blood believers to go over. The flesh and blood believers knelt on one knee and offered respect and loyalty to the hall masters. Your muscles are slack. The head of the hall master roared angrily, and the 3,000 gods trembled all over and buried their heads even lower. They are wailing. Everyone, follow me. The 5 hall masters immediately took fitness poses. 1, 2, crab pose. Hey ha. The 3,000 gods stood up, their movements were uniform, and they took fitness poses, showing off their muscle beauty. With this move, the gods in the audience froze in place, as if they were hit by a petrifying ray. The gods of the life system widened their eyes, their faces full of confusion. What are they doing? Probably doing some kind of ritual. In the Lost World, the hall masters roared angrily, vacuum belly. Ha hey. The 3,000 gods changed their movements again, still flowing like clouds and water, still uniform, showing a different kind of beauty. The gods looked at each other. Don't say it, don't say it. To be honest, don't exaggerate or slander. Don't slander or exaggerate, just say what you mean. It's pretty good. But this is a gambling fight. If you don't go kill demons, what are you doing? Fortunately, these followers of the flesh and blood cult have not been so obsessed with fitness that they forget their business. They immediately rushed towards the demons under the leadership of the 5 hall masters. After the morale boost just now, the followers of the flesh and blood cult have greatly increased their strength. Their movements to kill the enemy are no longer simple slashing, but as natural and graceful as dancing. Although they stop from time to time to do a few bodybuilding moves, their efficiency has increased by more than double. Not to mention the 5 killing machines with humanoid appearances. After completing the initial flesh and blood weapons and the aura of the sea god's knife and fork, they are all very fierce. The Supreme Elf King, who just shone brilliantly, pales in comparison with their 5 killing machines. However, what the gods cannot accept the most is that during the killing process, some demons began to learn bodybuilding movements from these flesh and blood followers. Moreover, there are more and more. As if they were being pulled by something, they followed suit and began to do the vacuum belly, crab pose, praying mantis pose, devil horns, war tramples. When these demons began to imitate and learn, the flesh and blood believers gave up attacking them and turned to kill other demons. And those demons that became weird would not attack the flesh and blood believers, but followed them like they were possessed, trying to learn more movements. Gradually, blood mist began to gather around these demons, and then they began to be entangled in flesh and blood, and finally they completed the flesh and blood armament. Blood. Offer blood to the god. Flesh. Offer the throne. The gods witnessed it with their own eyes. On the battlefield, a group of demons were converted by the flesh and blood sea god to become his believers. They raised their chainsaw swords high, and while they were doing bodybuilding, they killed their former fellow demons. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 378, Light Messenger Sect. Pa. A god in the audience suddenly slapped himself without any warning. After hitting himself, he rubbed his eyes and took a deep breath. Pa. Seeing that he was about to slap himself a third time, his companions beside him quickly stopped him. You. What are you doing? Are you crazy? The devil actually fell into depravity and became a believer of the god. Why do I have such a dream? This is not a dream. It must be that I didn't hit him hard enough. Let me hit him a few more times. Another god of the same pantheon also quickly held him down. Wake up, open your eyes, and take a look. Then, can it be considered a normal god? This is more devil than the devil. For a god like him who feels more at home in the abyss than in his own home, why do you take it so seriously? Not only them, many gods at the scene fell into some kind of unbelievable madness. They instinctively rejected everything they saw, and even doubted the world, causing the foundation of the god to be shaken. Memes. This is the power of memes. The elf dragon god had seen and experienced it before. He felt that this was the effect of some kind of meme mutation, but he couldn't explain why. After all, if it was really meme level, it would not have only this effect. It is very likely that all the gods present would start to build body after witnessing this slaughter. But in terms of expressiveness, this inexplicable belief pollution that ignores the transmission carrier is too similar to memes. Lavdia next to him slapped the side wall of the duel stage frantically. He had been banned from speaking and could only remind the elf dragon god in this way. Fortunately, the elf dragon god was still clear-headed, and he quickly stretched out his hand to signal the referee. Objection. I think the other player used unfair means. Objection. Acquisition. Adjudication in progress. Adjudication ended. No abnormality. The gambling fight continued. How can there be no problem? There is a big problem with this gambling fight that can be seen with the naked eye. Unfortunately, even if the elf dragon god shouted louder, the referee still ignored his objection. At the same time, the number of Poseidon believers under the Holy Light Court began to grow wildly. The 5 Hall Masters were not only powerful in combat, but also showed extremely contagious bodybuilding movements. A large number of demons became believers of the blood god and joined in this grand slaughter. They roared. They fought hard, but this time, everything was meaningful. Everything was for the great god of flesh and blood. Moreover, the god of flesh and blood was so generous. Every sacrifice would receive an unparalleled return. It was much more reliable than the demon god that was believed in before. Why not work hard? Under the interference of the whole master level combat power, the total number of believers soared to 10,000, and it was still rising continuously. Their efficiency in killing enemies was already beyond the reach of the elves. Unless all these high-level elves of the golden species were promoted to holy elves, there was no hope at all. Even if they could really be promoted, they could only hold on for a while, and the gap would be widened over time. Not to mention, Afra now had a huge amount of points in her hands. She no longer needs to spend points to invest more believers, and it is enough to directly develop the demons in the Lost Land. In this case, her score will get higher and higher, and there will be no consumption problem. The elf dragon god is simply powerless in the face of this ability. This round has basically lost all suspense. The so-called gambling fight has now become a stage for the Holy Light Divine Court to perform. But for the natural god system and the dragon god realm, this is an unacceptable failure. You know, they counted this first round as a round they must win. 2 out of 3 rounds. If the first round, that was planned to be one, steadily fails, then the next 2 rounds will be as difficult as they can. Raftel took a deep breath and punched the side of the duel stage. The elf dragon god looked down, and his eyes collided with Raftel's. The 2 gods nodded slightly in tacit understanding, as if they had made some kind of determination. Judgment. I apply for the 3rd divine gift. Judgment passed. Hearing the voice of the elf dragon god, the gods cast surprised glances. In this case, continuing to increase investment is undoubtedly a waste of money. Any resources thrown into the current battlefield are a naked waste. In such a defeat, is it possible that the life god system and the dragon god realm can still make a comeback? However, in full view of the public, the elf dragon god did something that made the gods dumbfounded. He stretched out his hand and pointed to the center of the arena, and a green light symbolizing life fell into it. Above the lost land, a beam of life power fell from the sky and directly hit the survival god tree. Under the nourishment of the power of God, this survival god tree began to grow wildly. In the end, the green fire of life ignited all over the body, like a huge torch. This is a phenomenon caused by the life energy being filled to the limit, causing the survival god tree to be unable to bear this power. The gods were very strange. With the ability of the elf dragon god, it is impossible for such a low-level mistake to occur. Could it be that the opponent really hit his head and his operation was deformed? And the next moment, a dragon roar suddenly came from the crack of the demon world and the lost world. Then, groups of demon dragons rushed out from these cracks, circling and roaring in the sky. At this moment, many gods reacted immediately. It was not a mistake at all. It was done intentionally by the elf dragon god. The purpose was to light the torch and turn the tree of survival into a beacon, so that the demon dragons could find the chosen gambling plane. Shameless. Shameless. They actually used such a dirty trick. The life god system really has no face. I was wondering why the life god system and the dragon clan were hooking up. It turned out to be for this trick. Judgment. Hurry up and make a judgment. This is a violation. This is cheating. Received a complaint from the audience. Judging. Judgment ended. No abnormality. Gambling continues. What? This is not a violation? Humph. There is no way. This is an outside trick. An old god snorted coldly, his face full of disdain and contempt. The life god system colluded with the dragon clan and asked the dragon clan to send out a group of death squads, which gave some kind of hints to the depths of these dragon souls, and then let them voluntarily degenerate into demons. When the gambling fight comes, although the lost land is randomly selected and no one can interfere, but as long as they send out a prearranged signal after entering the gambling fight world, such as lighting the living god tree, they can let the demon dragons come to this gambling fight world and become their fighting force. No wonder, it was obviously a gambling fight between the life god system and the holy light god court, but they spent so much effort and went around in circles and insisted on letting the elf dragon god be the duelist. The life god system is a great god system with a long heritage after all, and now it is using such a despicable trick. How shameless. They don't even care about their face. Looking at the large number of dragon-shaped demons covering the sky and the sun, Afra panicked. Light, what should we do? Light sighed. Didn't I tell you? When encountering such a thing, just swipe the card. Swipe the card. Yes. Card. Afra drew the next card and couldn't help but widen her eyes. The Light Messenger Sect? Chapter 379. I'm open. You can do whatever you want. As a dragon god, although he is an elven dragon and has been expelled from the dragon world and joined the life god system, but Irageril still has the ability to command these demonized dragons, because these demonized dragons are all shepherd dragons. Unlike the eternal dragons in the dragon world, the living habits of shepherd dragons are similar to those of bee colonies and ant colonies. Bees and ants use the pheromones they produce to judge enemies and transmit information. Shepherd dragons can use dragon power to determine the relationship between enemies and friends, and even the relationship between superiors and subordinates. This is the backup plan left by the Eternal Dragons when they created the Shepherd Dragons. After all, the number of Eternal Dragons is too small. Although they are more powerful and have purer bloodlines, they have to be on guard against the huge number of Shepherd Dragons. Dragon power is one of the many backup methods. Shepherd dragons are naturally awed and obedient to the high dragon power, and dragon power can even affect creatures other than dragons. Today, Dirajural is using his dragon power to protect the High Elves. There are now 3 forces in this lost world: the followers of the God of Life, the followers of the Holy Light Temple, and the demons. As they are all demons, the dragon-shaped demons will naturally not attack each other. Under the influence of the dragon's might, these demon dragons will not find fault with the High Elves. Then, the followers of the Sea God became the only target. The demon dragons roared and roared, rushing towards the camp of the flesh and blood believers. The huge body that covered the sky and the sun, and the fluctuations of the demonic power that crushed, withered and rotten, all showed the strength of these uninvited guests. Right, why not the Dragon Slayer sword? Aphra held the card in her hand and stamped her feet anxiously. With the Dragon Slayer's Lament, it would be easy to defeat the opponent. Wright directly threw the Dragon Slayer's Lament to Aphra, who immediately applied to the judge after receiving it. Me. I want to activate the third God's gift. Judgment in progress. Please wait. Judgment ended. The application was rejected. The reason for the rejection is as follows. The artifact that the Holy Light Temple tried to use was verified to be the bet pledged in the bet between the two parties. According to Article 8, Paragraph 2 of the gambling contract, mortgaged stakes cannot be used in the arena, so as to avoid affecting the final judgment of the fulfillment of the gambling contract after the stakes are consumed or damaged. Therefore, the application of the Holy Light Court is rejected. Aphra was shocked. How could this happen? Wright spread his hands. This is what they have planned. Do you think the Dragon Realm would be so stupid as to send the dragons to you to kill, even though they know we have the Dragon Slayer's Lament in our hands? Well, what should we do now? Didn't I say it? Swipe the card. Aphra hesitated as she held the card. Are you sure this card is useful? Isn't this a weird and useless holy light sect you created before? With your IQ, it's hard for me to explain it to you. Anyway, you sit first, and you'll understand after you see the effect. Aphra gritted her teeth and raised the card. Judgment. I'm going to activate the third God's gift. Judgment in progress. Please wait. Judgment is over. Application approved. Aphra quickly threw the light messenger card in her hand, and the card turned into spots of light and landed on the central field of the arena. At the same time, the sky of the Lost Land lit up again. But this time, it was not the blood red color that represented the flesh and blood sea god before, but a holy platinum color. Countless rays of light fell from the sky and landed on the flesh and blood believers one after another. At the same time, holy reason rings appeared above the heads of these believers. The rings began to rotate continuously, and the divine power of the flesh and blood sea god was injected from one of the rings, and then after being replaced by the holy reason rings, it was exchanged for the power of holy light according to a certain proportion and loss. And these holy light powers quickly covered the whole body of the flesh and blood believers, and formed huge holy light arrays under their feet. Praise the sea god. Praise the holy light. The flesh and blood sea god believers called from the bottom of their hearts. The huge amount of flesh and blood sea god's divine power that had been accumulated after a long period of fighting was transformed into holy light power at a very fast speed and injected into the arrays. Then, one after another, the human-shaped holy light battle puppets that were as tall as giants wrapped the flesh and blood believers one by one and condensed into shape. The messenger of light energy stood on the earth. They were so large that the dragons looked like newborn calves in front of them. Their entire bodies were made of divine power of light, but inside they had a complex and exquisite puppet structure, the culmination of all chemical mechanical puppets. What are these? Aphra pointed at the projection below, her face full of shock. This goddess of light, I have never heard of such a thing. I have never developed such a divine art. Of course you haven't developed it. This is a small handicraft I made during my work. It contains a series of professional knowledge such as Introduction to Alchemy, Holy Light Structure, Mechanical Puppet Encyclopedia, and Magic Spells, from beginners to burial. Wright spread his hands, and the holy light gathered in his palms, and condensed into parts, which were continuously combined to form a palm-sized light energy messenger figurine. I was inspired by the advent of the holy hammer, and the art of the holy spear. I found that, although the holy light is an energy body similar to the fire element and the lightning element, it has a shaping ability comparable to the ice element and the earth element. So I tried to use the holy light to construct parts first, and then splice the parts, to see what I could make. As you know, I have a better control over the affinity of the light element, which is 100%, so these things are not difficult for me. At first, I only made some pistols, grenades, sniper rifles or Gatling guns. Later, my fear of insufficient firepower became more and more serious. I began to think, what should I do if I encounter an enemy that is hundreds or thousands of times bigger than me? Guns and grenades obviously cannot give me enough sense of security. I feel uncomfortable, anxious, melancholy, and I can't sleep every day. Finally, one day, I realized it. I just made a supergiant light energy humanoid combat mechanical puppet that is big enough to compete with giant enemies. Wouldn't it be better? After making up my mind, it took me 3 hours to make this thing. I even gave it a domineering abbreviation, called the Light Messenger. There is only one word between your abbreviation and your full name. Wright stretched out his hand. None of this is important. Hurry up and give orders to your 10,000 light messengers, Commander. Afra heard the words and hurriedly looked at the battlefield. The situation at this time was directly reversed. More than 10,000 light messengers were facing at most 1 or 2,000 demonized dragons. In this situation, you can't even get half a dragon without using some tricks. The gods of the life system had already looked at Hen. Their eyes were bigger than dead fish, and they couldn't understand what was happening. On the contrary, the gods in the audience had completely given up at this moment. They were incomparably peaceful, and even had a kind of detached posture. They had seen too much outrageous things today, and they had completely lost the ability to react. Afra took a deep breath, and stretched out her hand to the arena below. Kill them all. Chapter 380 My Prediction. Subscription Request. Wow. How cruel. It's really too cruel. Wright stood on the viewing platform, and shouted at the top of his voice on purpose. A person as kind-hearted as me can't bear to watch it. But I think everyone should feel very happy at the moment. After all, we killed all demons. Although they are dragons, they became demons after falling into the demon world. We helped the Dragon Clan clean up the door. I believe the Dragon Clan must be very happy. After all, these are all traitors. Lord Raftel, do you think I'm right? Oh, look at my brain. How could I forget? You have been sealed by the judge, and you can't say anything you want to say. Then Lord Harisilia, do you think I'm right? Oh, look at my memory. How could I forget again? You were originally a dragon, and then you rebelled against the dragon world, and joined the life god system. You are also a traitor of the Dragon Clan. How can I ask you such a sensitive question? Please forgive my straightforwardness. You. The elf dragon god was so angry that he was shaking all over. After all, he was half a dragon of the god of life. He usually cultivated his body and soul, and felt the breath of nature. His state of mind was the most peaceful among the dragons. Now, he was also angry to death by the man in front of him. And the dragon-shaped demons that fell into the devil world on the battlefield were all dead and in pieces. More than 10,000 light messengers were beating 1 or 2,000 dragon-shaped demons in an inhumane way. You know, although the structure of the light messenger is real, because all the parts of the body are made of light element, and the control system belongs to spiritual perception, the power energy comes from divine power, and the firepower comes from divine spells and magic. It is simply a super energy system. No, it is a fantasy system. This encirclement and suppression is simply horrible. If the hands are a little slower, they can only fire at a pile of flying ashes. Thousands of dragons, and they are dragons whose strength has been strengthened after the fall of the devil. Suddenly, like a handful of snow thrown into boiling water, it disappeared in an instant. And this result completely crushed the confidence of the life god system. It was obviously meaningless to continue holding on. After the 5 Hall Masters controlled the Light Messenger, their strength was comparable to that of the primary gods. As for the remaining 10,000, they were basically fluctuating around the demigod legend. In this case, what else is there to continue? We admit defeat. Harakiril raised his hand helplessly, bringing the first gambling fight, which had already lost its suspense, to a complete end. The life god system initiated a surrender, the ruling was passed, and the gambling fight ended. Congratulations to the Holy Light God Court for winning the gambling fight. Finally, it's over. I don't know why. After the gambling fight ended, it was the gods in the audience who were the happiest. They seemed to be released from prison, and they breathed a sigh of relief and experienced the taste of freedom for the first time in a long time. They began to regret that they didn't work hard today and didn't enjoy their life as gods. Why did they go to the arena to watch the excitement? Why bother? Fortunately, everything is over. The gods stood up one after another, holding on to their last bit of dignity, and walked slowly towards the exit. Hey, don't worry, everyone. Wright suddenly waved his hand and shouted, "We still have 2 more gambling fights. Remember to come and watch." With a crash, all the reserve and decency were thrown out of their minds. The gods in the audience had no time to walk to the exit. They turned into rays of divine light and flew away at the fastest speed. In the blink of an eye, the arena was completely clear. Wright turned his head stiffly and looked at everyone around him. Did I say something excessive just now? Jonah smiled helplessly. Well, I don't think it was excessive. The main reason is that they don't know you very well. Once the gods are familiar with you and your style of doing things, I think everyone will get used to it. Jonah, my dear, you didn't comfort me. After sending all the believers back to the Holy Light World, Afra walked down tremblingly, holding the handle. What we mean is, what should we do with those believers? The Holy Light World cannot withstand so many demigod level strongmen. Light waved his hand. Don't worry, when they go back, they will abandon those material things. The believers of the flesh and blood sea god always pursue muscles and bodybuilding. After all, there is truth in the divinity of our sea god. What about those demons? Send them to the bottom of the sea to guard the gate with the flesh and blood angels. I understand. I'll do it now. Light grabbed Afra. Where do you want to go? Are you looking for an excuse not to participate in the next duel? Let me tell you, our gambling fight is 3 in 1. Starting from the first game, once the duelists are selected, they cannot be changed. Including, you can only summon the sea god's followers to participate in the next 2 games. Ah. How can this be possible? Afra suddenly panicked. When did this rule come about? Why haven't I heard of it? Because there have been almost no 3 in 1 gambling fights in the god realm. Only the extremely ancient forces such as the life god system and the dragon god realm know this ancient and precious information. Jonah frowned. This is not easy to deal with. The first game is to conquer the Lost Land, and the competition is about the ability of the followers to expel demons. The believers of the sea god should be a very suitable choice. But the second game is about preaching and management. In this regard, the elves of the life god system are too good. I know that the preaching of the sea god believers is not bad, but in the second game, they have to manage their own forces, develop and grow, and make civilization glorious. This aspect is probably the shortcoming of the sea god believers. Afra gritted her teeth. The shameless life god system actually used the information gap to bully us. This is not bullying. The food and grass must be sent before the troops move, and what is more important than food and grass is intelligence. Jonah's eyes suddenly turned. Since you have already said it, you should have known it a long time ago, right? And looking at your first game, you completely predicted all their operations. Hahaha, of course. Otherwise, how can I feel at ease and let Afra go on stage to fight? Afra puffed up her cheeks immediately. Hey, can you say this kind of thing in front of me? Jonah rubbed Afra's head, then looked at Wright. So, next, you also have a countermeasure? Of course. Wright also reached out and rubbed Afra's head. You continue to play in the second game, and then draw cards in order. As long as you listen to me, everything will be fine. You won't rub me bald, right? Chapter 381 The Importance of the Artifact. When does the next fight start? Jonah looked across, seeming a little uneasy. I guess. Afra said faintly, they need to slow down. Jonah shook her head. No, the problem I'm thinking is, from the last bet, the other party may realize that their information has been leaked. Then, the routines they prepared may have to be changed. The more time we give them to prepare now, the more disadvantageous it will be for us. If they completely change the next strategy, then we, Nora and Noi next to them looked at each other and said weakly, do you want us to find our acquaintances in the life god system and ask about the situation? Jonah reached out and rubbed Nora's head. No, they are so well prepared this time, they will definitely take your 2 connections in the life god system into account. By then, not only will they not get the information, but your friends will also be excluded in their own god system. Unexpectedly, Wright waved his hand. You worry too much. How do you know that all this is not in my calculation? Since I dared to show my cards and beat them in the first game, I expected that they would change the situation and change their playing style in the next game. Afra suddenly became excited. So, you have prepared a countermeasure? Of course. Jonah also asked curiously, what is that? To respond to ever-changing situations with the same strategy. Wright shook his fingers. In the next round, even if I tell the opponent the cards I'm going to play 3 days in advance, they may not be able to find a way to crack it. So, we don't have to care about what they do. As long as we follow the steps, we will be invincible. Remember, in this duel, they are the challengers. They need to spend a lot of effort, work hard, rack their brains, and try their best to be qualified to fight us. Nora and Noi's eyes were full of admiring little stars, and Afra also raised her hand excitedly. Great, I can't wait. Let's go. Let's walk around the arena. I guess the life god system will take a long time. Great. Then let's go to a nearby god material store to have a look. Today is a good day. Maybe we can find some good god materials. Wright grabbed Afra's collar and said, you spendthrift goddess, can't you do something serious? We've made so much money, shouldn't we spend it? Let's go and have a look. Jonah next to him suddenly said, for gods, a handy artifact is a very important partner. With an artifact, handling daily affairs will be twice as easy. Before, the foundation of the Holy Light Temple was weak, and it has not been able to set up a family business. I always think that, as long as I work harder, I can make up for the impact of not having an artifact. But through this fight, I can see that artifacts are very important to gods and even to the entire god's temple. We can choose some god materials to customize them ourselves, or just buy the finished products. In short, we must quickly raise the number of divine weapons per capita in the divine court to above the passing line. At this point, Jonah smiled and turned to look at Wright. These days, I have saved a lot of divine coins for the divine court, and it's time to use them. Wright hugged Jonah with relief. You are still so thrifty. Afra danced with excitement. Great. Long live Sister Jonah. Wright directly used his 5 fingers to lock her head, lifted her up in front of him, and stared into her eyes. My lady goddess, who do you think should be blamed for the fact that we have accumulated more than 1,000 years of coins in the divine court, but there is no currency to distribute? If you were more reliable, would we still have to live such a tight life? Afra covered her head and struggled. Wow, you love your wife so much. Why don't you transfer more working capital from the industries in the demon realm? Do you know that there will be a loss when transferring divine coins from the demon realm to the divine realm? You spendthrift goddess. I was wrong. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. My future pocket money. I will never spend it carelessly again. I thought you were going to say that you don't want pocket money anymore in the future. Afra gritted her teeth, her eyes firm. That's impossible. I swear to live, and I with pocket money. Okay. Jonah smiled and took away Wright's hand. Afra instantly hid behind her, rubbing her scalp with tears in her eyes. But, Jonah asked nervously, I haven't bought anything in the god realm either, but based on Afra's experience, isn't it very easy to encounter inferior products when buying god materials? What if we are cheated too? You don't have to worry about that. Wright smiled confidently. With me here, there's no way you'll pick up fakes. Why? My concept is emergence. Afra was bewildered. What does picking god materials have to do with emergence? Is it possible that God materials can be called God materials and are themselves a kind of miraculous creation? And miracles are the lower level concept of emergence. Afra became excited when she heard it. Why didn't you say it earlier? If you had said it earlier, I would have called you when I bought things before. No one knew about you when you bought things before. Right side, forget it. Let's not talk about this nonsense. Afra, lead the way. Let's make a quick decision. Don't forget, there are 2 more fights later. Great, let's go. After winning the first game, they could also go to their favorite shop to spend some money. Afra immediately took Nolanoy in front, while Jonah took Wright's arm and followed slowly from behind. Speaking of which, since I came to the God Realm, I have hardly left the Holy Light Court. I have never been to the arena, the market, and the like. I didn't expect that the God Realm would have such things. Wright laughed. The God Realm is very large. Although it is different from the mortal world, some basic things still have rules to follow. I just don't know whether it is the habits of the God Realm that shape the lower world, or the things of the lower world that gave back to the God Realm. In short, the God Realm is a place where many elements of the lower world are gathered. What's more, since there is a currency called God Coin, there will naturally be various places to spend it, like the God Material Market, the God Artifact Market, the God Servant Market, and the God Pet Market. It can be said that there is everything. For example, the angels that our Holy Court bought at the beginning were selected from the God Servant Market. It's just that you were busy with the affairs of the Holy Light Church at that time, so I asked the people in the market to select them for you and send them directly to the Holy Light Court. Jonah nodded slightly. The timely replenishment of those angels allowed the Holy Light Court to survive the busiest time. She rested her head on Wright's shoulder and smiled happily. Thank goodness you're here for everything. Then after you go back today, you have to repay me well. Hate okay. Chapter 382. Is this VIP card big enough? Led by Afra, Wright and the others left the arena and headed for the God Material Market not far away. Godly artifacts are extremely important to gods, and they are their closest companions. Therefore, the artifacts and the godly materials used to make them are considered the hard currency in the God Realm, second only to the godly coins. Some of the best godly materials and artifacts cannot even be measured by the amount of godly coins. For example, in this gambling fight, among the many bets on the side of the God of Life, the branches of the world tree are the best godly materials that cannot be bought with money. We are here, right here. Afra arrived in front of the market with ease, pointing to the building complex in front and introducing it. This side mainly sells divine materials, and this side mainly sells finished divine artifacts. Those in the distance are shops that can make divine materials into divine artifacts on the spot. Of course, for the more complex and advanced ones, you need to place an order and wait. And over there, they sell some weird little gadgets. Those things are more miscellaneous and there is no fixed sales location, so they just stay here and sell them. I recommend that shop more. Their boss learned from some underworld that all kinds of weird divine materials are put into special jars and sealed. The jars can isolate all kinds of detection methods and can only be opened after buying a certain jar. What divine material can be opened depends entirely on luck. It is said that a god opened 2 top-level divine materials in 10 jars in a row and became rich overnight. There are also gods who spend all their savings to buy hundreds of jars, but ended up losing everything. In short, this divine material jar shop is really a sinful place that carries countless dreams and countless despair. Let's start from here. Before Afra could finish her words, Wright hit her on the head with a knife. Now, I know how your god coins disappeared. Woo woo. Then tell me, where should we go? Wright had a sly smile on his face. I say, is there a store of the God of Life here? Afra was stunned at first, and then she smiled slyly. Oh, you are still the bad one. It doesn't matter if you win the bet, but you still go to someone's store to taunt them? What else? Wright stood up straight. I didn't taunt them when I didn't win. After I won, I didn't taunt them. Then wouldn't our bet be won in vain? I have said so many times that the bet is not the purpose, and winning or losing is not the purpose. The face-to-face taunting after making a profit, that is the purpose. It seems that there is no store of the god of life here, but there is a store of the dragon realm. Wright's eyes sparkled when he heard it. Oh, is there such a thing? Then I have to go and pay them a proper visit. Jonah pulled the two sisters Noya and Nora, looked at the smirking duo, and shook her head helplessly. When she was still a saint, she thought the goddess of holy light was really great and kind. But now after working with Afra, the filter is shattered. After deciding on the victim, Wright and his party drove straight in. Although there were still many shops on the roadside, they were not just a group of people who came to buy divine materials, and they didn't even look at them. They went straight to a shop of the Dragon Realm Dragon Clan. It was a huge storefront, and the decoration was obviously the characteristics of the Dragon Clan. There was also a carved divine stone dragon head with its mouth open at the entrance. Wright and his party raised their legs to walk into the store, but were immediately stopped by the demigod level guards at the door. What are you doing? What do you mean? Buying things, spending money? Ha. The guard sneered. Go away. Our store only accepts VIPs. A country bumpkin god like you who came from nowhere is not worthy to come in. Wright frowned. How do you know that I'm not a VIP? I can tell by the look on your face. Let me tell you, I almost know all the VIPs who often come to this store. And VIPs all know that they have to show their VIP cards before entering the store. People like you who just barge in don't even know the most basic rules. You still want to pretend to be a VIP. At least do your homework before coming here, okay? At this moment, two dragon gods in half-dragon form walked out of the store with displeasure on their faces. What are you arguing about? Didn't I tell you that there are important guests in the store today? Keep quiet. The guard hurriedly stepped forward to take credit. Lord God, these guys tried to break into our store, but we stopped them. But they didn't give up and pretended to be VIPs here. Wright snorted coldly. How do you know that I'm not a VIP? I also have that VIP card. The two dragon gods were stunned for a moment. You have a VIP card? Impossible. All the VIPs in the store are received by me, and I have never seen you. Your VIP card, it can't be obtained by someone else. As soon as he said this, the surrounding guards immediately surrounded Wright and his group. Sorry, sir. You can't leave now. Even if you want to, I have to see the VIP card you mentioned. Or, check your belongings. Wright laughed at this. You want to see it? Okay. Then I'll show you my VIP card. After that, he pulled out the Dragon Slayer's Lament with a bang and nailed it to the door. Instantly, the terrifying aura of the dragon nemesis overflowed. The surrounding demigod dragon guards and the two dragon gods suddenly felt an indescribable fear surge in their hearts. Their blood ran cold, their limbs were powerless, and they all fell to the ground with a bang. Not only them, but also the other dragon gods in the store collapsed to the ground, and the stronger ones were shaking like sieves, as if they had seen a peerless killing weapon. Wright reached out and flicked the dragon slaying knife lightly, and the crisp buzzing sound almost made the dragon gods collapse. How is my VIP card? Is it big enough? Is it powerful enough? Can I enter your shabby store? Unfortunately, no one could answer this question. Several demigod level guards had fainted, and the two dragon gods were trembling all over, their two rows of teeth fighting wildly, unable to say a word. At this moment, several figures flashed from the store and stood inside the door. Wright looked up and saw that it was Rafdal and the people of the life god system. Hey, why are you here too? We should be the ones asking you this, Mr. Light. Rafdal looked at Light angrily. Are you here to make trouble on purpose? Wow. You can actually speak. I thought you were mute. Light slapped his forehead. Sorry, I forgot. You could speak from the beginning, but you were muted in the arena. We came here, of course, to go shopping and see if we can exchange for some good divine materials. After all, as you know, we are about to make a fortune. There is no way people sit at home and windfall comes to their door. It's just that some people like to give me divine tools, divine materials, and divine coins. How can I explain this? If I don't spend them quickly, what if my house can't hold them one day? You. Rafdal was so angry that his face turned red, and Light smiled and took back the dragon slaying sword, which allowed the dragon clan to regain the right to breathe freely. You are here to plot how to fight the second duel, right? Don't worry, you can discuss whatever you want. We are just strolling around. I didn't expect that you had such bad luck and we ran into you again. Don't be nervous, we will choose our magic materials, and you continue to discuss how to lose gracefully. We all have a bright future. After that, Wright pushed Raftel away and walked into the store with Jonah and others. Chapter 383 0 Yuan Purchase. Subscription request. No matter how much the people of the Life God system hated them, they could not stop Wright and others from entering the Dragon Clan's God material shop. There was no way. In front of Wright, who possessed the Dragon Slayer's Lament, no matter how powerful the Dragon Clan was, it could only beat a small lizard that could be easily crushed to death. As for relying on the prestige of the Dragon Clan to make the other party restrain themselves, don't even think about it. You know, this gentleman in front of you, but he carried a dragon slaying sword and chased the Red Dragon God Emperor all the way to the gate of the Dragon Realm. Later, he directly used this sword to threaten the entire Dragon God Realm. Such a ruthless person, expecting him to have any fear, is really tired of living. Where are the people? We are the distinguished guests spending money here. Why is there not even a manager? Although he was very unhappy, a Dragon God store manager who had recovered still walked over tremblingly. Mr. Wright, what do you want to order? Oh, do you know me? Look at what you said. Although we haven't seen you before, your name is well known. As a Dragon Clan, everyone knows you. In fact, if you just told us your name, we would definitely not stop you. There is no doubt that you are our honored guest. Seeing such a humble store manager, the gods of Afra were a little uncomfortable. After all, whether it is the giant dragons in the mortal world or the dragon gods in the dragon god world, they are all very arrogant. Wright couldn't stand it and waved his hand. I still like your unruly look just now. You recover. How can that be possible? Isn't that disrespectful to you? Then you wait over there. We will turn around and choose, and we will call you after we have chosen. Before Wright finished speaking, the dragon god turned around and ran away, as if he had been pardoned, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Is it that serious? It still looks very intimidating. Afra ran over and held Wright's arm and shook it non-stop. Brother-in-law, can you lend me your dragon slaying sword to play with? Go away. Can you play with my dragon slaying sword casually? If you put this thing in your hand, you will definitely get into trouble. And with your temper, you might run to exchange it for divine coins for me, and then go to smash the jars. Let me tell you, I see through you. Afra failed to act like a spoiled child, so she had to turn around and leave with a pursed mouth. Wright greeted everyone. Choose what you like, and all the consumption in the store today will be recorded. Record as much as you can, and owe it first. It must be said that there are many treasures in the Dragon Clan store. First of all, the Dragon Clan's favorite thing to do is to collect various treasures. Their reputation for greed is highly circulated across the world. Dragons were even once equated with treasures, which is also one of the motivations for many dragon slayers to fight endlessly. Secondly, the footprints of the Dragon Clan can be said to be spread all over the world. In order to help the Dragon of Destruction, these guys with bad intentions went to every grazing world, leaving behind the Dragon Island as a potential safety hazard. Whenever the grazing dragons return to the Eternal Dragon Realm, they will eventually bring back some top quality divine materials. Over time, a little bit will add up to a huge treasure trove. It is estimated that what is displayed here is not even a drop in the bucket. But for some ordinary gods, every divine material here is a top quality one, a treasure that can only be encountered but not sought. Even some gods do not even have the qualifications to step into this store in their entire lives. However, Wright does not care about these. He now knows one thing, that is, the Dragon Clan and the Life God system are now working together to calculate him. Whether it will succeed or not, let's not talk about it. This matter alone cannot be forgiven. In fact, the Dragon Clan is also very uneasy at this moment. After all, it is absolutely irrational for the Dragon Clan to provoke Wright, the living king of hell who holds the dragon slaying sword. But now is a once in a lifetime situation, and the Life God system also has to deal with the Holy Light God Court. The dragons decided that, if our dragon world and the God of Life joined forces, they would kill them all. Even if the opponent was the Holy Sin Wright, they would have a great chance of winning. In this way, they could take back the dragon slaying sword and no longer threaten the dragon clan. With such a huge profit, it was worth the gamble even with such a big risk. Hence, there were 3 gambling fights today. Unfortunately, although they did not misjudge the improvement effect of the cooperation between the 2 sides, they misjudged Wright's ability. The disastrous defeat in the first game made the Dragon Clan even more uneasy. If the gambling fight ended, and the God of Life lost in the end, then they would most likely be greeted by a bloody purge. That Wright, that Holy Sin, was definitely not someone who would give up easily. He would definitely retaliate fiercely. Keep an account. Just keep an account. Everyone can still tell the difference between money and life. Fortunately, the entire store is not full of fine products, and there are many fakes and forgeries mixed in. Even if the opponent came to choose the divine materials, there is still a high probability that they will choose some mediocre fakes to take back. The store manager watched from a distance, and he couldn't help but hope in his heart that the divine materials they let them choose were all low quality fakes. In this way, the loss can be minimized. This is garbage. There is no miracle taste at all. This is good. Take it. Wright didn't choose anything, just wandered around in the store. When he saw Afra and the others choosing divine materials, he took them directly to sense them. If it resonates with his own concept, it is not bad. The stronger the resonance, the better. In this case, whether the divine material is good or bad, it can't escape his detection at all. Therefore, under his emergent concept ability, the divine materials in the Dragon Clan shop can be said to have been robbed. Even among these divine materials, Wright really found a few very good boutiques. The Dragon Clan's shop is not good either. There are fakes and inferior products everywhere. Wright shouted to the store manager in the distance while choosing. I think you should thank us. After all, we helped you to eliminate all the unqualified goods. In this way, we can help you reduce the pressure of work and prevent other customers from buying these inferior counterfeits and help you maintain the credit and reputation of the store. But don't thank me, thank justice. Thank justice. Wow, this god material is good. Buy it, buy it. The dragon shop manager next to him was bleeding. You helped us identify the authenticity, but this behavior of taking away all the treasures and leaving only the inferior ones, what good is it for us to identify it? The result is that all the god materials displayed in the entire store are gone. The key is that you took them away and didn't pay. Account? Yes, it was accounted. But if the account is recorded, who dares to ask for it? Who dares? What's the difference between you and robbing? The difference is that it's not a treasure that you don't want, right? Just when Wright was happily shopping for 0 yuan with people, the gods of the life system hurried out from the back room of the store. They looked solemn, as if they were ready for battle. Hey, Wright greeted them. Are you ready? Let's go back to the arena and start the second duel. Now that the duel is over, let's come back to shop. I told the manager, remember to restock the stock. Chapter 384, Betting. Be serious. After a short break, the second gambling fight was about to begin. When Wright led his men back to the arena, he found that the arena was crowded with people, and the audience seats were almost full. Obviously, the grand occasion of the first gambling fight had spread. A large number of gods who were willing to watch the excitement almost swarmed here, hoping to catch the exciting tale of this gambling fight. After all, the life of a god is sometimes more boring than human life. What is more amazing is that the audience of the first game did not stay much for such a wonderful gambling fight. Only a small number of gods with more determined minds chose to continue watching. But for Wright, none of this mattered. When he saw so many gods coming, he suddenly had an idea and started to set up a stall in the arena and put out the goods he bought from the Dragon Clan God material shop for free. These things are all fun things, containing a strong miracle power. But because they are not compatible with the members of the God Court, there is no need to stay. However, in the store at that time, Wright, in the spirit of, since we are here, packed up and took away everything. I thought that I would find an opportunity to sell all these good things in the future. Now looking at this situation, isn't this the best opportunity? Take a look. Take a look. The new god material powder is a good deal. They are all treasures. They are all good stuff. Don't miss it if you pass by. If you miss this village, there is still my store, because I run a chain store. Wright put the god materials together and shouted to the audience, 50% off, 50% off for the whole store, 50% off for everything. You won't lose out if you buy it at 50% off. You won't be fooled if you buy it at 50% off. Guaranteed quality, quantity, and authenticity. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and buy it. He shouted like this, and the audience was a little dumbfounded. Aren't we here to watch the gambling fight? Why is one of the parties in the gambling fight setting up a stall here to sell god materials? Moreover, these god materials look so familiar. And the boxes and containers containing the divine materials. Isn't this the symbol of the dragon god realm? Some gods who often visit the divine material market couldn't help but exclaimed, I know this divine essence stone. Isn't this the treasure of the dragon god realm store? There is no mistake. This shape and size. It must be that piece. But isn't this thing an on sale item in their store? Why did it appear in this person's hands? Another god was amazed. Don't worry about the divine essence stone. Look at the dragon blood tree next to it. That is as thick as a wash basin. That is a peerless divine material that can only be grown by the dragon clan at the dragon god king level with its own blood for hundreds of years. In the entire world, it is estimated that only the dragon clan can afford such a precious treasure. Did this kid rob the divine material store in the dragon god realm? No matter, I want to take a look. They are really good things. Not long after, Wright's store welcomed a large number of gods, and they began to buy frantically. The divine materials that were of no use to the Holy Light Temple were quickly snatched away by these gods at a 50% discount on the market price. In just less than 10 minutes, Wright made a huge fortune. Seeing that Wright's stall had been sold out, some gods who failed to buy the divine materials they wanted were a little disappointed. They asked pitifully, boss, do you have any more? No, we still have use for the remaining divine materials, so we won't sell them. Oh, what a pity. These gods turned around and were about to leave, but unexpectedly Wright stopped one of them, revealed a mysterious smile, and lowered his voice. I see that you are sincere in buying. How about this? Tell me what divine materials you want. I will go to the Dragon Realm Divine Material Shop to rob next time. I mean, when I go to buy goods next time, I will buy goods for you. However, for customized goods, not only will you have to pay a 40% discount, but you also have to pay a deposit first. The gods present were all shocked. It turned out that you really robbed these things from the Dragon Clan. What's the custom made thing? Next time you will rob with a purpose, right? Some of the gods turned around and left. They didn't want to get involved in this dispute related to the Dragon God realm. But there are still many gods who chose to cooperate with Wright, provided the divine materials they wanted, and paid a deposit. Hey, are you done yet? We are gambling. Gambling. Can you respect your opponent? Even if you don't respect your opponent, at least you have to respect the arena. The elf dragon god on the opposite side roared angrily, and his voice was a little hoarse. That made people feel distressed. He stood high and far on the duel stage, and almost witnessed the whole process of Wright dumping the divine materials. They were all gods, and the voices just now were also very clearly transmitted to his ears. It hurts. It hurts too much. Just now, when this person ran to the Dragon Clan shop to rob, he was present throughout the whole process. Those good divine materials that even he, the Dragon Clan god, dreamed of were swept away by the other party with a single word of accounting. He saw it in his eyes, and his heart was bleeding. Now he is still setting up a stall here, selling all these things in front of him. Still 50% off. The elf dragon god really wanted to stand up and accuse Wright of his unjust behavior with blood and tears. But he knew in his heart that it was completely useless to do so. Because he was no longer a dragon of the Dragon Clan. For this gambling fight, he was first expelled from the Dragon Clan, and then joined the life god system. He no longer had the position to blame Wright's behavior for the Dragon Clan. Now, he can only scold the other party with such a lame excuse of disrespecting the duel. Think about it, it's really sad. But this pathetic situation was his own fault. The elf dragon god's mental state was like a slug that fell into salt, twisted and uncomfortable. He felt that his divine foundation was about to collapse. Looking at the trembling elf dragon god, Ravdal swallowed his saliva. Although he could not empathize with him, he could probably understand his grief. Ravdal looked at right opposite him with some fear. At this moment, he actually regretted getting involved with this man named Holy Sin. It was just a short break between two gambling fights. But he easily did something that was enough to break the opponent's psychological defense line. The price was that he not only found the best divine materials for every god in the god's court, but also robbed the enemy and made a lot of divine coins. This is not a win-win situation, it's just a win. Okay, I've sold out. Wright slapped his hands, made a start gesture to Afra, and then waved triumphantly to the life god system. Then let's start the next game quickly. I can't wait to see what tricks you guys are going to play. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385, Vicious Life God System. Amid the grief and anger of the elf dragon god Heretic, the second gambling fight slowly began. The opening was still to choose the venue for the gambling fight. Under the power of the arena's great will judge, the arena quickly selected a world that had just been born not long ago. After choosing the stage for the duel, the two sides could start the formal fight. However, just as Afra was about to draw a card according to Light's arrangement, a light suddenly appeared on the duel stage opposite. Judge, I apply to use the god's blessing. The ruling passed. It can be used. The gods and the audience were shocked. The duel had just begun, and both sides had not yet sent believers to the destination. Using the god's blessing so early? This is a god's blessing that can only be used 3 times in a gambling fight. Are you going to waste one of the opportunities? However, the next moment, Heretic's operation made all the gods present scalp numb. I activate the withering of life. Heretic took out a scepter from behind and pointed it at the arena below. A green light bloomed from the scepter and poured into the shadow of the arena. Then, in that young world, green light bloomed above the sky. Then, all the life in this world began to wither rapidly. In the blink of an eye, this new world completely lost its vitality. Such a scene made the god's scalps numb. Even Wright frowned and clenched his fists. Jonah subconsciously grabbed Wright's arm. What are they going to do? These lunatics actually used such a vicious method. Wright rubbed his forehead. I expected them to change their tactics, but I didn't expect them to be so cruel. He then shouted loudly in the opposite direction. It's obviously the life god system. You actually used such a vicious method that blasphemed life. You are simply an insult to the name of the life god system. Shameless. Shameless to the extreme. Facing Wright's scolding, the elf dragon god in the life god system also looked ugly, but they did not mean to repent at all. Childish. Ridiculous. This is a bet. The elf dragon god was also a little shaken at this moment. After all, not everyone, even a god, would have the awareness to kill all the lives in the entire world. Moreover, this matter was very contrary to his divinity. I activate the second divine gift. The ruling passed. You can use it. The elf dragon god took a deep breath and then took out a palm-sized scarecrow. I activate the special prop of the arena, the voodoo strawman. The ruling is in progress. Please wait. The appearance of the voodoo strawman caused an uproar at the scene. Many gods didn't even know what it was. Fortunately, there were some old gods who often mingled in the arena to answer questions and solve doubts. This is a special item in the arena. It is a reward that only gods who have completed certain achievements in the arena can get. You may not know that the arena is not only a place for gods to settle personal grudges. At the same time, in order to survive, the arena itself will also organize a series of duels. After all, for the arena, if no one comes here to gamble for a long time, then the great will of the arena itself will gradually die. It's like a big tree that has no one to fertilize or water it for a long time, and it can't get sunlight. And the prizes of these competitions, as well as achieving certain achievements in the competition, will get some props with arena privileges. Although these props are only effective during the arena duel, Because of their domineering effects and relative rarity, they are more valuable than ordinary artifacts. Basically, it is in a situation where you may not be able to buy it, even if you have divine coins. The life god system is not good at fighting. Although it has participated in this kind of competition in recent years, there have been no eye-catching competitions. On the contrary, the Dragon Clan has won victory after victory. I guess this strawman prop is probably given by the Dragon Clan. These two big forces are obviously joining forces to pit the Holy Light Court. They are really bullying others with their power, so shameless. Judgment completed. Special props of the arena, Voodoo Strawman. Prop effect, you can choose to sacrifice your own initial number of people to destroy the enemy's initial number of people. Please provide the number of sacrifices. The elf dragon god took a deep breath and slowly spit out a number. 9. When the audience heard the result, they started to discuss it like a pot of boiling water, and there were two reasons. First, as a missionary business type of gambling fight, it is completely different from the gambling fight of exterminating demons and recovering the lost land. In the missionary gambling fight, the initial number of believers is capped at 10. The elf dragon god directly blew up 9 of them and chose to die with Afra. In other words, the number of people that both sides can now send to the target world is only 1. The second reason is that the number of people sent to the business type of gambling fight cannot be increased. In other words, after sending 10 people at the beginning, both sides cannot continue to send new believers to this world. All new believers must develop the world's native inhabitants with 10 initial believers. Because the focus of this gambling fight is on preaching and management. But because of the previous withering of life, the vitality of all life individuals in the target world was cut off. In other words, there will be no natives. Now the number of believers everyone has placed is nailed to 1. Can this competition continue? Unless both sides have another special item in their hands that can increase the number of initial believers beyond the specification. Otherwise, everything seems to have entered a dead end. After completing the first 2 divine gifts, the elf dragon god let out a long breath, looking like he had won. Afra was stunned on the spot, not knowing what to do. Then, the audience saw that the elf dragon god went to this completely dead world and placed the only believer, the holy elf. When the holy elf fell from the sky and came to the dead world, he cut his palm and splashed blood on the lifeless earth. Then, new vitality bloomed, flowers, grass, and bushes gushed out like springs, and tall trees also rose from the ground. In a blink of an eye, the holy elves created a large oasis, which became the only vitality in this world. Then, he reached out and touched these plants. Flower fairies flew out of the flowers, grass spirits popped out of the lawn, wood elves were born in the bushes, and the huge trees turned into tree people. In a blink of an eye, the number of believers belonging to the life god system began to soar. If this continues, it won't be long before they win. Afra looked at Wright, but the latter had a calm expression and made a card drawing gesture to her. Afra was stunned for a moment, then she took a deep breath and drew the next card. There was only one word written on it, spores. Chapter 386 Mushroom Man Mushroom Europe, subscription request. Spores? Afra turned the card over and over again, but could not see anything. But with the previous experience, Afra did not doubt anything this time, but threw the card directly into the field. With the light blooming, the believers belonging to the Holy Light Temple fell from the sky and landed heavily on the target world. The gods leaned forward to look around, their faces full of curiosity. To be honest, when the life god system played this set of completely shameless combos, most of the gods were angry and scolded the dragon realm and the life god system for having no shame. But they also basically acquiesced that the Holy Light Temple basically had no chance of winning this game. How to fight this? It's unimaginable. The entire god realm, let alone cracking this style of play, even if they want to replicate this behavior, it is impossible. After all, there is only one life god system. Only they are qualified, have the background and ability to play such a rogue trick. No other god system can play it. But when the gods in the audience saw the appearance of the only believer that Afra had thrown, the atmosphere suddenly became weird. Because they really couldn't tell what this thing was. Could it really be considered a believer? No, no, no. Or to be more direct, could this really be considered a living creature? It's clearly a meatball. But it seems that the material of this thing doesn't look like meat. It has some plant texture. It gives people the feeling that it is a mixture of plants and animals. This thing is the size of a haystack, and it's hard to tell what it is made of. It has no nose, no eyes, no limbs, no head, and no buttocks. It's just a living individual. Can you win by making such a thing? Even the gods of the opposite life system were confused. I protest. Ravdal suddenly raised his hand. Is this a believer of the other side's god of the sea? Wright put his hands on the railing and shouted, "Shut up, you muted guy. That was the last game. Of course I can speak now." Ravdal seemed to have caught Wright's flaw and called out loudly to the judge, "I protest, this is cheating." His actions immediately attracted a tidal wave of abuse and curses from the audience. "Shameless, do you want to see what your camp just did? You still have the nerve to mention the word cheating? The life god system really has no shame." Objection has been obtained. Adjudication in progress. Please wait. The adjudicator turned his head and looked at Afra, with two eyes covering her. Wright sneered and whispered, "Afra, swipe the next card for yourself." Afra quickly drew the card again and stuck it on herself. The next moment, the holy law ring reappeared. The holy light power occupied the outer periphery of the two circles. One circle was exchanged for the power of the sea god, and the other circle was exchanged for the power of life. Then, under the crazy operation of the holy law ring, the power of the sea god and the power of life merged and formed a new power. When the adjudicator detected this power, he immediately retracted his gaze. The adjudication is over. There is no abnormality, and the duel continues. What? How is this possible? Ravdal gnashed his teeth, but in the arena, the judgment of the judge is absolute and cannot be questioned. If he questions and protests again, he may be banned again. But he is not panicking now, because in the new world, the situation on his side is not small, but great. The scene of all things thriving and thriving is right in front of him. And the opponent is just a haystack-sized, weird thing. What is there to be afraid of? The main thing is that he lost. That's the biggest joke in the world. However, the next moment, something that shocked the gods happened. The mass of things squirmed and turned into a huge meat cavity. Then a new meat mass drilled out of it, rolled to the side, and then gradually began to change, forming a shape similar to a small house. From this small house of unknown material, a reptile of unknown material drilled out. It began to crawl around quickly, then swallowed valuable mineral materials, and then drilled back into the small house. There is a mushroom-like channel connecting the small house to the original meat cavity. It is visible to the naked eye that a large amount of decomposed materials and energy are transported back to the meat cavity. Not long after, another meatball rolled out of the meat cavity and then changed into another form. Then, from the second small house of unknown material, a life individual with a pink body and a body structure made of unknown substances walked out. What is the principle? The gods exclaimed in surprise. This operation makes no sense at all. How can one meatball become two or three, and how can a new life form emerge? Even Afra couldn't help but look back at Wright. What on earth is this? Sports, isn't it clearly written on the card? Clear. Are you trying to tell me that everything that just happened can be explained clearly with the word spores? Wright spread his hands helplessly. Okay, then I'll explain it to you in another way. He pointed to the shadow of the arena below. The big one is a base that the base vehicle has become. The one next to it is the resource furnace, and the one next to it is the barracks. Next, we need to build a series of buildings such as energy reaction fields and vehicle manufacturing plants. As for the humanoid life form you saw, I call it Mushroom Man Mushroom. This is a group with unlimited potential, and the future evolution direction will adapt to the living environment. Their next task is continuously collect resources, then improve their civilization, continuously evolve, and continuously improve themselves. Increase population, occupy more resources, continue to improve themselves, increase population, and occupy more resources. Just like that, repeat, and repeat again and again, until they reach the top of the world, become the overlord of the mushroom world. Afra's face was full of expectation. The overlord of the mushroom world? What is that? Well, it's still a mushroom man. What about me? What do I need to do? You are completely useless now. Just stand on the stage and continue to watch. Wright gave a thumbs up. Look how good you are. You didn't spend a penny and got a good seat. You let me stand on the duel stage as a spectator. Didn't I say that? The mushroom people and the mushroom people have adaptive abilities that you can't imagine. You just need to press the start button and they will do the rest by themselves. Afra slapped the railing angrily. Such a tribe is simply anti-god. You are useless anyway. Otherwise, you can be a cheerleader for the mushroom people. Just as Afra was chatting with Wright, the mushroom people in the gambling world had already begun their crazy development path. Their incredible behavior caused the gods in the audience to scream again and again. Chapter 387 Industry Benchmark. What on earth is this? I'm afraid this is the common feeling of almost all the gods present. To be honest, to become a god, one must have experienced unimaginable sufferings for mortals and have seen all kinds of messes. But to be honest, no one has ever seen such a weird thing. It looks like some kind of self-reproducing biological group. I have seen self-reproducing organisms, but most of them have very simple life structures. You know, self-reproduction is a high-risk breeding behavior that can easily go wrong. One of the gods slapped his thigh and said, I understand. The key lies in the meatball that was dropped before. It is actually like the holy elf, with a lot of information stored in its body. Although it has reproduced so many individuals, it is all based on the information of the mother body. Once the mother body is destroyed, then this group will be completely finished. The gods suddenly realized it, but they looked at the scene in the arena very attentively. For them, this new method is very inspiring. Many gods have begun to think in their hearts whether their followers in their own pantheon can also copy this model. After all, being able to run such a prosperous business in a world with no vitality does have many methods worth learning from. As an opponent, Diragerol was also very surprised. He originally thought that after 2 cheating gods gifts came, he had basically won. He never expected that Wright would do such a thing. He looked at Raftel next to him, who also shook his head helplessly. In this case, we can only continue to develop. Don't worry, even if we develop hard, we will not lose. I think we can win, as long as we destroy the unknown meat mass he initially released. Well, indeed, even if it can't be fatal, it will cause great trouble and make it lose the possibility of competing with us. Ravdal nodded repeatedly, appreciating the elf dragon god's on-the-spot judgment. Then develop in the direction of the main battle. We still have one more god's gift to use. The advantage is still in our hands. Okay. The life god system quickly made up its mind, and the followers also began to develop rapidly under the control of Hiragerol. At this time, the victory or defeat of both sides has changed from the initial missionary management to the competition for resources, the development of self-power, and the improvement of the number of followers and the level of civilization. Only by defeating the other side can we win. Although the form of the competition has changed, the test of the management ability of both sides has become more stringent. It is precisely for this reason that the judge did not stop the duel. After all, the core has not changed. The elves are working hard to develop themselves and are rapidly developing towards the main battle mode. But on the other hand, in the Holy Light Court, Wright is playing a tabletop game in the Netherworld with Jonah and Noinala. Afra on the duel stage was too bored and could only lean on the railing to watch Wright and the others play the tabletop game. It seems that the attraction of that tabletop game is more important than the duel. The elf dragon god was so angry that his teeth itched. Although you won the last game, you don't have to be so arrogant, right? What about the minimum respect for the opponent? You really don't treat us as human beings. He wanted to shout and let the other party take this duel seriously, but he can't, because he was at an absolute disadvantage in the duel. Although the Saint Elves were very powerful, and although the survivability of the followers of the life god system was among the best, but their opponents were even more terrifying. Without paying attention, the other side opened a second base. After finding a place rich in minerals and resources, the old base immediately sent a team to escort a new spore meatball to this place. Then, repeating a series of actions after just landing in this world, a brand new base was built. The two bases exerted their strength at the same time, and the speed of development increased by more than double. The most important thing is that, although the two bases are far apart, the mycelium underground has been connected together. The two sides can share information, resources, and evolution points. When the evolution points and the resources required for evolution are sufficient, the two bases complete the transformation of all members together, becoming a model that is more adapted to the current world, and the development rate is several times faster. These mushroom people soon have their own civilization, and began to build cities and walls, and soon began to take shape, and their bases continue to expand. When they encounter places rich in resources, they will open bases, and then develop worldly. Before long, the mushroom people actually formed a prosperous and vast city group. It was about to advance from a tribal civilization to a kingdom civilization. It was simply leaving the entire family of the life god system far behind. So fast. Very fast. The whole process was not dragged out at all, and there was not a trace of waste or hesitation. They were determined in their goals, and had a clear division of labor. After a set of combined punches, the gods and the audience were stunned. Is this the template for the development of civilization? In an era when everyone was busy with their lives, this step-by-step fast-paced style of play suddenly emerged. The shock to the entire circle of gods was not small. So, it can be played like this? At that moment, the gods watching knew what it meant to be orderly, and what it meant to be smooth and smooth. At this moment, all the gods had only one word in their minds to describe everything they saw: professional. There was even a hint of aesthetics in it, which made people feel comfortable and their souls had goosebumps. This new model will undoubtedly subvert the entire circle of gods, become a new benchmark in the industry. And Wright, who invented this business model of dependence, will become a great sage and saint in the entire industry. Compared with a standardized business model of dependence, the free-range business model they used before is as ridiculous as a child playing house. As the focus of everyone's attention, Heretic on the dual stage has become a ridiculous collection. Everyone's eyes looking at him at this moment are not mocking, but full of sympathy. This makes him even more unacceptable. What do you mean? Why are you looking at me like this? Why do you look at me like this? You are the same when you come up, and you are even worse than me. But even if you think so in your heart, it's useless. After all, it's him who is standing here now, and only him. Even Ravdal, who is an accomplice, is not as dazzling as he is now. This is simply a public execution. The most uncomfortable thing is that such a scene is still based on the premise that they cheated in advance. Even after playing tricks like that, he was still pinned to the ground and even became the background of others' magic operation. Heretic really wanted to die. Don't be afraid. Ravdal next to him gritted his teeth and said stubbornly, he is only good at business development. Since this is their strong point, let's use superior force to defeat the enemy. Heretic, use surprise attack on them. Chapter 388. What's yours is mine. Ravdal's thoughts were actually the thoughts of most gods present. Things are often like this. If you have an outstanding aspect, then there will be a corresponding disadvantage. A follower who is good at fighting is not good at business, and a follower who is good at business may not be good at preaching, and a follower who is proficient in preaching may not be good at fighting. This is why a powerful pantheon has a variety of followers. It is to make up for each other's shortcomings through different ethnic groups, and finally form a powerful and comprehensive cluster in a combined way, to achieve the purpose of the gods, and conquer one world after another. The Life Pantheon is the founder of this school. This can also be seen from the composition of the Elf Empire. The Tree People, the Elves, and the Unicorns complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, making the original Elf Empire so powerful that it was simply impeccable. The reason why the Elf Empire declined was because of the internal turmoil of the Life Pantheon and the withering of the ancient Tree of Life, which led to the mutation of the core follower elves. In the end, the situation of complementary advantages was broken and was defeated by humans. Now that Wright has made up for his shortcomings, the combat power he has shown is beyond the reach of ordinary humans. Nowadays, in this young world, there are still many kinds of followers of the life god system. Flower fairies, grass spirits, tree people, wood elves, advanced ordinary elves, and even big elves. In terms of the rationality of the ethnic group ratio, it is indeed more reasonable and more comprehensive. If a coalition is formed, there must be tanks, mages, assassins, archers, treatments, and control. This kind of all-round army, fighting against the opponent's ethnic group. Isn't it easy to capture? The advantage is mine. Heretic also thought so. Since we can't develop, then we can win by destroying the enemy. This behavior often happens even in the normal business gambling before. There are even some gods who don't do any business at all and win by physically destroying the enemy's beliefs. Although it is quite extreme, I can't care about it now. March. Take down the enemy's fortress. Heretic assembled a large number of troops and rushed towards the enemy base closest to him. Seeing the aggressive look, some gods in the audience immediately became nervous. Wrong. We shouldn't take this step. Afro on the duel stage clung to the railing and waved her fist. Nora, listen to me. Split 3 ingots to brush the orange magic weapon. Then strengthen and refine it. Use the 7-star formation to kill 10 times in a row in the Canadian War. Wright waved his hands again and again. Go away. Do you understand? You are just giving orders here blindly. Do you know that a true gentleman who watches chess without speaking? Haha. He is anxious. He is anxious. It means I'm right. Heretic on the opposite side was so angry that his teeth were about to break. You didn't care about the business development at the beginning, and now you still don't care when the fight is about to start? What kind of board game is so fun? Take a look at your opponent. Care about the battlefield, bastard. Kill them. Kill, 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 kill. The angry Heretic gave an order, and the Life Dependence Alliance immediately launched an attack. The magicians of the elves chanted powerful magic, and the tree people took heavy steps and came towards the base. Archers shot countless magic arrows, and the assassins hid their bodies and lurked towards the enemy, ready to stab a fatal blow. In the face of the enemy's attack, the mushroom people's base also responded immediately. Accompanied by a piercing buzzing sound, teams of mushroom people warriors armed to the teeth rushed into the fortifications with weapons in hand. One after another, airstrike units slowly took off, and heavy firepower ground vehicles quickly assembled. An energy defense barrier rose above the entire base. Without exception, all magic and arrows were resisted. Obviously, these mushroom people can also use magic. Even the utilization rate is far higher than that of the opponent. After resisting the first wave of enemy attacks, the base immediately began to fight back. Heavy artillery began to roar, flying units also released bombs and missiles, and combat units in fortifications began to shoot frantically. Firepower that was more than 10 times more fierce than the enemy was instantly poured onto the positions of the Life Dependence Coalition, bringing destruction and death. The dense firepower network seemed to set the sky on fire. After a round of volleys, the entire coalition lost a full 40%. The tree people in the first row were completely wiped out, and there was not even a slag left. Just the first round of confrontation made many gods drop their jaws. The life camp fired a round of volleys, but they didn't even blow up the other party's defensive barrier. As a result, the other side counterattacked and almost took away the entire coalition. This firepower, this is too different. It's not even the same level. Heretic was directly stunned. He just thought about the route to continue advancing after the victory. Then, he was slapped back to reality, looking at the strange enemy combat units in the arena that he had never seen before. He felt sick. The appearance of these mushroom people was still anthropomorphic, but their air vehicles, ground vehicles, and architectural styles were too strange. Some looked like a collection of insects, able to spray corrosive venom. Some looked like a mixture of dragons and moths, with extraordinary firepower. There were also some rolling worms that would self-destruct, and crawlers that could burrow into the ground. In short, they looked like a fusion of various animals and insects, and their power was very terrifying. And their weapons were even more incredible. It was obviously a bunch of strange parts, wood, and ore, but when they were randomly combined, they were even more ferocious than the heavy firepower magic cannon. There was simply no reason at all. Poor Heretic. He assembled 80% of his troops and planned to establish an advantage in one fell swoop. As a result, he couldn't even take down one of the new bases on the periphery. He also lost a full 40% of his troops, and it was a compliment to say that he was defeated miserably. But just when he was about to stop the loss and retreat, something even more terrifying happened. Something like fleshy moss suddenly began to spread from the enemy base, quickly covering the entire battlefield. The bodies of the life god system followers who were just blown to death were dismembered and absorbed in the blink of an eye. Then, from the barracks of the base, a group of individuals with the same appearance and abilities as the local units walked out. And a large number of buildings in the base began to be updated and upgraded, and began to have the style of life god system buildings. How is this possible? Ravdal screamed in horror. He knew very well what this meant. The enemy's civilization is devouring them. Chapter 389, and more. Subscribe. Seizing enemy civilizations is not unheard of. After all, business gambling competitions involve not only business, but also preaching. Preaching to the world's indigenous people is no big deal for these gods who often graze. It is simply a piece of cake. What can really determine victory and humiliate the opponent to the extreme is to snatch the opponent's believers. If you can successfully preach to the opponent's 10 original believers, it will be extremely glorious. But everything in front of you has nothing to do with these. The enemy can actually seize the civilization, technology and style of your side through the corpses of your own family members on the battlefield. If this kind of words were said before, I'm afraid you would be laughed at by other gods. Are you still asleep? But this kind of thing happened right in front of everyone. The elf style was perfectly integrated into the architecture of the mushroom people. A large number of mushroom-shaped flower fairies and grass spirits were born and filled in the right positions to shine for the entire tribe. The control of life element, which the life god system is proud of, has also begun to become the ability of the mushroom people. Your advantages, your strengths, the things you are proud of, are really good. But the next second, they will all be ours. The gods felt a chill in their hearts, thinking about how uncomfortable it would be if they encountered such a difficult enemy. If they were not careful, their secrets would be taken away by the enemy. And looking at these new pseudo-life dependents they produced, they are almost exactly the same as normal life dependents, and cannot be distinguished by the naked eye. And in terms of ability, they have been analyzed by the enemy, and it is even more impossible to judge the enemy and ourselves. If this is infiltrated by the opponent's spies, it is simply impossible to defend against it. However, these gods worried too much. On the battlefield, those fleshy mosses suddenly began to form spore balls one after another, and continued to surge. Puff! With a sound of light, a large amount of spore smoke filled the entire battlefield. Those life god family members who failed to retreat in time were caught off guard, and were soon wrapped in the smoke, choking and coughing and sneezing. Fortunately, an elven magician reacted quickly, and released a powerful wind magic to blow away the strange spore smoke. Under the oracle of Heretic, these followers quickly withdrew, and returned to their own sphere of influence to recuperate. After suffering heavy losses, Heretic was disheartened. Rafdia wanted to persuade his companions, but unfortunately he couldn't find any angle. We still have one last killer. Suddenly, Rafdia spoke again, with madness reflected in his eyes. We still have one more divine gift. What do you want to do? Rafdia gritted his teeth. Launch another life extinction. In this way, everyone's followers will die, and the judge will judge that the gambling fight has failed. We can judge this round as a draw. At that time, the gambling fight is over. The winner is the Holy Light God Court. The sudden announcement of the judge made the elf dragon god and Rafdal freeze in place. Even the gods in the audience couldn't react to what happened. What happened? Why did it end? Although it seems that the life god system has no chance of winning. But if the other party refuses to admit defeat and holds on to the end, it can still hold on for a long time. How did it end? I protest. Ravdal didn't even think about it, and raised his hand and roared. How did it end? We haven't made a move yet. We still have one god's gift to use. The head of the judge turned around, and his voice was neither sad nor happy, without the slightest ups and downs. There is only one side of the believers in the gambling world. After the gambling is over, the winner will be the Holy Light God Court. How is this possible? I still have so many followers. My followers. Harakiril only felt at this time that there was no more power of faith in this young world. What's going on? Where are my followers? Where are my believers? Aren't they here? Why did they suddenly rebel? Did something go wrong? The gods in the audience also talked a lot, and an old god smiled slightly. Have you forgotten the seemingly ineffective spore smoke just now? That is the winner of this gamble. Those individuals of the life god system shrouded in smoke have actually been planted with the seeds of rebellion. However, they did not rebel at the first time, but honestly listened to the oracle of the gods, and returned to their own camp. Then, they began to spread secretly, spreading like a plague, until all the individuals were infected. They rebelled together again and completely cut off the lifeline of the life god system. Look at that stupid god, he hasn't reacted yet. Oh, that's it. This is too scary, it seems unpreventable. Yeah, there was no sign in advance. This kind of infectious missionary method seems to be corrupt and polluted. Is that holy light god court really a legitimate god organization? Why do I feel that it is more magical than the devil and more evil than the evil god? Don't worry about it. Go around them when you meet them in the future. At this time, Harakiril also understood the whole story. He sat down on the duel stage helplessly. Ravdal looked at Hen. His shameless plan failed. Before he could start, the 4 bets were now in the other party's pocket. Not only that, because of these 2 bets, the reputation of the life god system was ruined, and it was completely reduced to a clown. It was a real loss of fame and fortune. Not only did we lose the lady, but also the army. Did we win? Afra finally reacted. She took a look at the result, and then began to calmly clean up the dependents scattered in the young world. Unexpectedly, Light waved his hand and said, "Forget it, don't clean it up. This world has been completely cut off because of the life god system, and there is no indigenous people left. If we all withdraw, this young world will probably die. Let them stay in this world and continue to develop, leaving them with the breath of life." Light's decision immediately aroused applause from the gods in the audience. Everyone was very sure of this result. Amid the applause, Wright lowered his voice and said to Afra, "We have to find a way to find this young world and turn it into the permanent world of our pantheon. How can we earn more by grazing everywhere than by starting from a young world? Believe me, this is a brand new model, and we will make a lot of money." Afra said in amazement, "You don't miss any benefit." "That's right, I tell you, to do this kind of thing, you must have the courage to be 3 feet high." Afra's eyes were full of confusion. "What do you mean by 3 feet high? A foot is a unit of length. The meaning of 3 feet high is that the ground is rolled away 3 feet deep, making it seem like the sky is 3 feet high." Afra swallowed her saliva, expressing her great shock. She turned to deal with the affairs of the dependents in the young world, while Wright held the railing and looked at the life pantheon. "Hey, what do you think? Are you unwilling to give up? I can give you a chance to play a 3rd game, but you have to give us our winnings first. Then, you have to increase the stakes." Chapter 390 How can a gambler lose every day? Should I continue to gamble? Ravdal, who was so angry that he lost, gnashed his teeth and veins popped out on his forehead. He was very hesitant because he felt that he had a sure win in the last 2 bets, and the 3rd one was just a backup plan. But now, he lost the first 2 games and lost completely and miserably. If this bet ended like this, he and the entire life system would become a laughing stock in the eyes of the gods, and this bet would become a topic of conversation for everyone to have fun after dinner. They would be nailed to the pillar of shame. In particular, the new ideas shown by the Holy Light Church in the 2 duels would inevitably cause a change in the entire world of gods, and they would also be engraved in the long river of history as negative examples and background boards. For the short-lived, this is still an unacceptable shame. For these gods who have almost no upper limit to their lifespan, it is even more tingling to think about it. "Let's bet." A god of the life system whispered. "At this point, we have nothing to lose." "Yeah, how bad can it get?" The other gods of the life system also agreed. They didn't want things to end like this. They were not unwilling, but they had a completely different mentality. That was the determination and helplessness of a person whose life was hanging by a thread, facing the last straw. "Let's bet. I want to continue betting with you." Wright smiled slightly. "Very good. But before that, you have to hand over what you lost to us." The judge in the sky thought for a while and slowly spoke. The bet has been changed. The request of the Holy Light Court is reasonable. The bet is settled. Two rays of divine light bloomed from the eyes of the judge, covering the position of the gods of the life system. Then, 4 balls of light took off, flew over the sky of the arena, and landed in front of Wright and others. The coat of the gods of Gackless, the wreath of praise of the Elf King, a branch of the world tree, and the scepter of the god of order, with only the head. Ha 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 ha, what a great harvest. As the saying goes, a man cannot be rich without external wealth, and a horse cannot be fat without night food. Wright happily played with his spoils. If you want to be rich, you still have to rob the big dogs. Come on, the 4 of you line up, let's divide the spoils. Wright gave the coat of the gods of Gackless to Jonah, and the head of the scepter of the god of order to Aphra. As for the wreath of praise of the Elf King, and the branch of the world tree, they were directly given to the 2 sisters Noinala. Aphra held half of the scepter in her hand, and tears filled her eyes with excitement. I finally have my own artifact. Ha 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 ha. Although it's only half a piece. Aphra took a deep breath. Half a piece is better than nothing. In the future, you should go to those god material stores that open jars and treasure chests less often. All the bets won had a destination, and everyone was smiling. Wright turned around and looked at the life god system again. Okay, the bets for the last round have been handed over. What can you bet next? Let's make a deal first. If you can't interest us, then don't play the last game. The gods of the life god system talked about it. After a long debate, Ravdal finally chose to stand up again. Obviously, he is now the spokesperson for the entire life god system. Why don't you name a price? Wright was stunned for a moment, and then his face was full of contempt. Even the gods in the entire arena booed. After discussing for a long time, the result was this. But there were also many gods who agreed with this decision. Although it seems humiliating to do so, it reduces the chance of being rejected by the other party to 0. What if the Holy Light Court cheats and refuses to play the 3rd round to decide the winner, no matter what price the life god system offers? The life god system will not get anything and will be humiliated for nothing. But if this problem is thrown to Wright and his team, they can ensure that the 3rd round must be played. At most, the other party asks for a sky-high price, and they can just pay it back on the spot. There are so many gods watching, and there is an absolutely fair judge. Even if the other party wants to ask for a high price, they can't do it. Wright laughed, and he easily saw through the other party's tricks. This kind of behavior of judging others by one's own mean heart is despicable. Light turned to look at the 2 sisters Noi and Noi. You two, do you have anything you want? Let's win it all at once. Don't be nervous, don't be polite, it's best to make them feel pain and humiliate them severely, and it will be very beneficial to us. Quick, think about it. Noi looked at each other and finally said in unison. Then, we have to go to the Palace of Zistri. The Palace of Zistri? Yes, Zistri is the god emperor of the 1st generation of the god system, and the Palace of Zistri is our former home. In other words, it is the palace of the god emperor where the god king of the life system lives. Noi and Noi's eyes were full of memories, and it was obvious that they missed their former home very much. That is where we grew up, and it is also a beautiful royal garden, and it is also a symbolic building complex in the life system. Light clapped his hands. I understand. A wonder. Then, we should indeed win it. After that, he turned his head and looked at the gods of the life system, revealing a kind smile. After our research, we have decided that we are going to bet your Palace of Zistri. As soon as these words came out, the gods of the life system were shocked at first, and then they roared angrily to vent their dissatisfaction. As the saying goes, don't hit someone in the face, but Wright's request can be said to be hitting them in the face and throwing their faces into the stinking ditch. Facing the other party's anger, Wright made a pause gesture and then slowly asked a question that made the other party speechless. In your life pantheon, are there any gods with the blood of the Emperor of God? Since none of you have the blood of Empress Zistri, why are you still obsessed with the royal garden of the Emperor of God? I have the authentic blood of the Emperor of God, the legitimate heir of the royal garden. Let me tell you, even if you don't bet today, we might come to visit one day and take this place back. Now I'm giving you a chance to use it as a bet, so just be happy. How about it? Do you want to bet or not? Just give me a straight answer. The people in the life pantheon were excited, and they looked like they were going to fight right to the death. But in the end, Ravdal stretched out his hand to stop everyone. He took a deep breath, his eyes full of madness. We bet. Chapter 391. The Forcefield Dragon reappears, asking for monthly tickets. Ravdal's decision shocked the gods. Is this really a gambler's mentality? They're going to bet on this kind of money? Or are they really sure of winning the third game? If they can really win, how did they lose so badly in the first 2 games? Even within the life god system, there are many people who disagree with his decision. But Ravdal's words made all the gods of the life god system quiet down. I will use the oldest and most powerful fighting force in the Hall of Heroes, at the cost of my divinity. Seeing that he was willing to do this, who else had the right to say anything? Several gods who were close to him were very worried and wanted to persuade him. No, Ravdal. After your divinity is devoured, you will never be able to make further progress, and you may even die on the spot. Is all this worth it? If you can win. Ravdal gritted his teeth, and held the railing tightly with both hands. If we can win, we can not only take back the crown of the Sun King as planned, but also the crown of the Moon Goddess. One of them is the key artifact needed for our plan, and I want to keep the other artifact. Ravdal looked back at the gods of the life divinity. I will use the crown of the Moon Goddess to stabilize my foundation, and then use the power of the entire pantheon to recast my divinity. In this way, we can minimize the losses. The plan can also proceed smoothly, but the risk is too great. Hearing that there are still gods opposing him, Ravdal was furious. At this point, do you have any other effective methods? This is the only way we can go. Everyone. The gods of the life pantheon looked at each other, and finally nodded helplessly. After calming down the internal opposition, Ravdal turned around, and pointed at Wright. Our bet is the entire Westerly Royal Garden. And your bet is still the 3 artifacts. Wright waved his hand and said, no, only the Flame King's crown and the Moon Goddess's crown. If you want to bet on the Dragon Slayer's whale, the Dragon Clan needs more bets. Hearing this, the Elf Dragon God was furious. Right, how can you go back on your word? Are you going to bet or not? If not, get out. Anyway, even if we don't take this thing now, everyone in the life god system won't have any objections, right? Ravdal didn't say anything, but nodded slightly. At this point, the life god system can no longer worry about the Dragon Clan's alliance. To be honest, although the Royal Garden has a high symbolic significance, it has little practical significance. If you look closely, it is actually not much different from one of the crowns. In fact, it is slightly worse. Wright was reluctant to bet onto crowns. After all, both the Moon Goddess's crown and the Sun King's crown are artifacts of the God King level. If we must talk about the symbolic significance to the God of Life, it is not inferior to the Royal Garden. If we bring the dragon slaying sword, then if it is not approved by the judge, the God of Life will have no place to cry. Husband and wife are birds of the same forest, and they fly away when disaster strikes, let alone this kind of interest cooperation with many holes. Okay. The elf dragon god was no longer pretending. We dragons can make another bet. But we dragons don't bet on these gods of the God of Life. We have to do it ourselves. Wright raised his eyebrows slightly. So you are also going to form a team of heroes to fight us? That's right. No need to be so troublesome. Wright stepped on the guardrail with one foot and stretched out his hand to hook the other party. You two families come together. After hearing Wright's speech, the gods at the scene were in an uproar. They didn't expect that they could watch an overtime game. What's more, they didn't expect that the overtime game would be more exciting than the regular game. The Holy Light God Court is going to fight with the God of Life and the Dragon God Realm. Moreover, the Dragon Clan and the God of Life came to fight as challengers. Such a heroic spirit attracted the attention of all the gods present. Before this gambling fight, although some well-informed gods had heard of Wright's name, but now, the entire god realm has truly reacquainted this man. Why, you are not afraid? How is that possible? The Elf Dragon Clan roared again and again. Holy Wright. You will pay the price for your choice. I can pay the price. It depends on whether you have the life to take it. Who doesn't make a ruthless statement? Wright rubbed his fingers and gestured to the Elf Dragon God. But before that, what can you, the Eternal Dragon Realm, bet on? Although the wail of the dragon's lair is only a blessing weapon, if what you bring out is not as good as the god of life, I will laugh at you, and laugh at you severely. The elf dragon god was in a dilemma. Although he agreed, his status in the dragon god realm can only be regarded as the upper middle level. This is because the number of elven dragons is relatively small, and they are also the bond between the eternal dragon clan and the god of life. His decision-making power is only at the level of the dragon god king. If he wants to make a bet that satisfies Wright, at least the dragon god emperor must make a move. Just as he was struggling, a shadowy figure slowly appeared behind him. We can give you the clue to the key of truth. The transparent figure slowly spoke, but the gods looked at a loss. They vaguely realized that someone was talking, and also sensed that there was a powerful existence behind the elf dragon god. However, the specific content was unknown. Wright knew very well that this translucent figure was the highest decision maker of the dragon clan who rescued the angry red dragon god emperor last time, and the force-field dragon, one of the 3 legendary dragon species of the dragon clan. Its omnipotent force field is memorable, and it is impossible to forget it once you see it. The key of truth. As the only person at the scene who could hear the other party's voice, Wright frowned slightly. With it, can you open the door of truth? With it, you can track the location of the door of truth in reverse. Wright was stunned at first, and then sneered. If there was such a thing, wouldn't the dragons have gone hunting for the gate of truth a long time ago? The dragons don't want to conflict with the gate of truth. Nonsense. Wright narrowed his eyes slightly. Destruction is part of the truth. If you are really cultivating the dragon of destruction, then the contradiction with the gate of truth is irreconcilable. The so-called truth is broad and grand. The gate of truth has great ambitions. Any existence that tries to go further than the concept cannot avoid the obstruction of the gate of truth. What we can give you is fragments. Seeing that he couldn't fool him, the force field dragon had to tell the truth. But it's a complete fragment. Not enough. In addition, when you deal with the Gate of Truth organization, the dragons can help you with all their strength for free, 3 times. Wright stroked his chin, thought for a moment, and nodded slowly. Okay. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392 Blooming Blood Rose. Subscription request. Wright hated the dragons. But he had to admit that the dragons were really powerful, and the top level was even more powerful. The Holy Light Court was weak. If there was really a full-scale war with the Gate of Truth one day, he could be safe and worry-free. But what about Jonah and Lilith? In a fight of this level, even conceptual masters are likely to fall, not to mention the people in the Holy Light world. Wright agreed to the force field dragons not to borrow their power to eradicate the Gate of Truth. He wanted to buy an insurance for the people around him. The guarantee of the 3 full strength attacks of the dragons can protect their rear in times of crisis. As for destroying the Gate of Truth, the Eternal Dragon Realm can't be counted on. Since they have the key to truth in their hands, they have not dared to act rashly until now, which shows that these big lizards are not very courageous. They are proud and arrogant, but that is compared to their weak individuals. When they meet a real tough guy, 1 or 2 will be more cowardly than anyone else. This can be seen from the fact that the dragons suffered such a big loss at the hands of Wright last time, and now they only dare to use this method to solve the Dragon Slayer's whaling problem. Such guys can't be called teammates at all, let alone trust their backs to each other in a life and death fight. In other words, they can only be watchdogs and shields. After reaching an agreement with Wright, the transparent shadow of the force field dragon dissipated, and the entire arena returned to normal again. Just when everyone was relieved, a dragon roar suddenly came from the sky. Then, several huge dragons flew quickly and began to hover over the arena. Some gods with lower strength in the audience were scared to death. Even the powerful gods dared only curse in secret and dared not express their dissatisfaction directly. Because these extremely huge dragons hovering over the arena are several powerful dragon emperors in the Eternal Dragon Realm. The fact that they were able to arrive at the scene so quickly indicated that these guys had been hiding nearby for a long time, watching the development of the situation. Now that the force field dragon had negotiated the price, they came to take over the next heroic spirit fight. After all, for the dragon clan, the elf dragon god was no longer qualified to handle this matter. Seeing that they had been hovering in the sky, Wright was very dissatisfied. He directly pulled out the Dragon Slayer's Lament and chopped it on the guardrail. With the blessing of his emerging power, the fierce and abnormal dragon nemesis aura was temporarily upgraded from the power of law to the power of concept. The dragon god emperors in the sky were immediately frightened and messed up. They were flying well and suddenly collided with each other and fell from the sky one by one like wild ducks that were shot down. The embarrassed appearance immediately caused the gods to laugh. The dragon god emperors fell heavily on the arena. They looked at the laughing gods with shame and anger, but they did not dare to make any moves. After all, there was someone watching them covetously, and this person really dared to chop. The dragon god emperors transformed into human forms and gathered at the duel arena at the other end of the arena. Seeing that they had calmed down, Light put away the dragon slayer's lament. The format of the gambling fight has changed, and the venue is adapting. After the dragon clan arrived, the judge also made a sound. Then, the whole venue roared. The dual arena of the original life god system was divided into two, and began to slide to both sides along the arc of the arena. In the end, the two opposing dual arenas became three dual arenas arranged in an equilateral triangle. As the representative of the life god system, Ravdal stepped onto the dual arena of the life god system. On the dragon clan side, a dragon god emperor who had never been seen before was replaced. Light, this time Afra looked at Light timidly, and the latter nodded slightly. Just continue. Although the duel has changed, it has not changed much for the Holy Light Divine Court. As a mortal, Light still cannot step onto the duel arena. The Dragon Slayer's Lament, as a bet, still cannot be used as a trump card in the duel. This is one of the reasons why the Dragon Clan dared to take on this bet. But right, we don't have any heroic spirits. Afra cried, and she only remembered this after she stood on the duel stage. Strictly speaking, the Holy Light Court has heroic spirits. The previous popes and the Holy Spirits who performed very well in the Holy See, and there are quite a few of them. But the strength of these heroic spirits is really not good enough. And the most important point is that they are strictly speaking the heroic spirits of the Holy Light Goddess. As a continuation of the previous two duels, the Holy Light Court needs to continue to participate in the war according to the faction of the Sea God. The Dragon Clan and the Life God system can change people because of the new bet. Wright asked for a 1-on-2 fight, which was considered to be tacit approval of the other party's personnel change. If they want to change people, the judge will probably not approve it. What's more, it won't be much better if they change. Unexpectedly, Wright laughed and waved his hand gently. The so-called heroic spirit gambling fights have a cap of heroic spirits, do you understand? As long as they are followers under the command of the gods, they can serve as participating units. It's just that under the command of the gods, heroic spirits are the highest level combat units, so in such gambling fights, the default is to use heroic spirits to fight. In fact, there are also many heroic spirit gambling fights that are mainly carried out with heroic spirits and followers from the lower world as auxiliary. Afro was stunned for a moment. How do you know? Why haven't I heard of it? Because I asked someone to do a survey, and intelligence is very important. As for why you haven't heard of it, I think most gods don't know much about it, because almost no one will use followers to fight heroic spirits. The upper limit of followers is demigods, and the lower limit of heroic spirits is demigods. Isn't it giving money to people to play gambling fights like this? But the rules allow it. Light pointed at the arbiter in the sky. What I said, am I right? Yes, this gambling fight allows the use of followers to fight, and the upper limit is heroic spirits. But Afra still had a sad face. That's useless. You also said that the upper limit of the followers is demigod, and the lower limit of the heroic spirit is already demigod. We are now using the followers to fight against the opponent's heroic spirit army, or the life god system and the dragon god realm. Maybe even if you search the entire god realm, you can't find a combination with a stronger foundation than these two. I dare not even think about how strong the ancient heroic spirits they will bring out. How can we beat them with our followers? Wright shook his head. Look at what the next card is. Afra hurriedly drew a card after hearing this, and it turned out that there was a blood red rose on it. The blood red rose knights? Isn't this the original Holy Rose Knights, who later switched to the flesh and blood sea god? Afra was desperate. If you call those whole master level believers from the first gambling fight, maybe you can still fight. Wright waved his hand. Why use a butcher knife to kill a chicken? They are enough, he said, and then summoned the Synlight. Chapter 393. The head coach is warming up. When Light drew out the holy sword Synlight, the entire arena was stagnant. After 2 gambling fights, he and the Holy Light Court had become stars among stars. Their every word and action affected the nerves of every god present. Forget about the audience, but the other 2 camps were really panicked. What does he mean by drawing his sword? Question mark? He wouldn't want to go down in person, would he? Then, what's the point of everyone playing? But if you think about it carefully, it's not impossible. The gods of the Dragon Clan and the life system suddenly realized that they had overlooked a big problem before. That is, although Light is not a god and cannot replace Afra on the duel stage, but he is essentially a paladin. That is to say, he is considered a follower of the 2 holy light goddesses. Strictly speaking, he can enter the arena and start fighting from the first gambling fight. Don't tell me, according to the rules of the arena, the judge may really allow him to enter. This is terrifying. If he goes into fight, no one will have any chance of winning. After all, the purpose of gambling is to strictly limit conflicts to those below the level of gods. Even if the heroic spirits can reach the demigod level, they are not gods. The dignity of being a god is still there. Then, including the heroic spirits, all the dependents and clans, who can compete with such a conceptual mortal? Not to mention the heroic spirits and their dependents. Even if the gods of the Dragon Clan and the God of Life personally come to the field, they may not be able to defeat this man. Oh no. He planned it. He didn't go to the field in the first 2 rounds, just to get the 3rd round and trick us again. It's over. It's all over. Ravdal seemed to have been drained of all his strength and collapsed to the ground. Although he has a way to make the heroic spirits in the Hall of Valor of the God of Life burst out with super standard power that is only at the level of dependents and heroic spirits. Even if he himself bursts out with super standard strength, he may not be able to do anything to Wright. So how can he win? The Dragon Clan is not much better. When Wright rolled up his sleeves and walked up with the Synlight, several Dragon God Emperors subconsciously took a few steps back. When they saw that the other party was holding the Synlight, their faces were slightly relieved. But on second thought, it seemed that there was no difference. The Dragon God Emperor standing on the duel stage was even more depressed. He originally wanted to come up and perform to show the powerful strength of the Dragon Clan. In the end, it was a scapegoat battle with no chance of winning. Wright also realized that there were some misunderstandings at the scene, and quickly nailed the Synlight in front of Afra, and then took 2 steps back. Hey, don't look at me like that. You don't think I will personally go down there, do you? It's really sad. Where is the most basic trust between gods? Our Holy Light Divine Court is not a third-rate god system that plays tricks and cheats. We still have to have faith, and we won't do some despicable things to win. Everyone, don't worry. I just put the props I want to use up there so that it will be convenient to take later. After saying this, the atmosphere of the audience at the scene became noticeably lively. But the gods of the Eternal Dragon Realm and the God of Life looked even uglier. Although they were sure that Wright would not take action, what was the difference between what he had just said and pointing at their noses and scolding them for being worthless? They wanted to refute, but they had no tenable arguments. After all, the scenes of the first 2 games were still vivid in their minds. They dared not refute, and now that he announced that he would not leave the field, that would be the best result. If Wright was forced to leave the field because of a dispute of arrogance, there would be no place to cry. So, knowing that they were being scolded, they could only lower their heads and endure it. Not to mention talking back, they didn't even dare to make an unhappy expression. The feeling of dying of cowardice made them feel uncomfortable all over. One god with poor tolerance even began to vomit due to the pressure. The gods and the audience were extremely excited. They were really happy because both the Dragon Clan and the God of Life were the best in the God realm. These guys usually show off their power and do a lot of things to bully others, especially the Dragon Clan. The life god system is a hypocrite. At least they still have some respect. The Dragon Clan is a real bastard with no bottom line at all. Now, they are suppressed by a small god court and can't turn over. One or two of them are like eating shit and have to swallow it. It's really refreshing. Since there are no other problems, let's get started. Ravdal was afraid that something might happen later, so he quickly applied to start the competition. The judge nodded slightly and announced, "The War of Heroes, the duel begins." Afra was quick and threw out the Scoletros card directly. After the second duel, she realized that if she acted too slowly at this time, she would fall into a passive position. So from the beginning, she had been ready to go, and this time she finally got the chance to summon the heroic spirit first. Well done. Wright stood on the guardrail and looked at the arena below. The young ladies of the Scoletros Knights had been summoned here with the light. Wright had already been in the fairy tale subspace before the duel and told them about the duel for the god court through dreams. So they have been preparing all the time, without any surprise, but formed a battle formation at the first time, ready to fight. Now, apply for a god's blessing, and then swipe the next card. Afra turned into a ruthless card swiping machine at this moment. Under Wright's command, she immediately applied to the judge, and after the other party passed the judgment, she threw out the second card. The effect of this card is full blessing, in order to bless the status and aura of the girls of the Scarlet Rose. Afra is very familiar with this. After all, this is a very common operation in the gambling battle of heroes. Blessing the heroes summoned by themselves with various auras and amplifications is a hard requirement in the gambling battle. However, there are only 3 gods blessing opportunities during the gambling battle. If all of them are used to brush the aura, it would be too wasteful. Moreover, with only 3 auras, the improvement is also limited. In this case, whether it is useful or not, the gods wish to throw all the aura amplifications that can be blessed to the heroes. So, in the long evolution of the gambling battle, a method similar to the aura collection appeared. The gods who were fighting loaded all their halos into a spell or a divine weapon and blessed all their followers at once. Although this was very time consuming and energy consuming, when it came to a fight, both sides basically didn't care about it. As the light of the Holy Light Court's full blessing bloomed, the holy principal rings appeared on the heads of the girls of the Scoletros Knights. Under the operation of the rings, blood-colored sea god blessings began to shine. At first, no one took it seriously. But after 5 minutes, the blood-colored light was still shining, and the gods in the audience couldn't sit still. Anyway, there were too many blessings, and it seemed that there was no intention to stop. Finally, after about 10 minutes, the blood-colored light finally stopped flashing. Just when the gods and the 2 opponents breathed a sigh of relief, the holy principal rings began to operate again. Then, the milky white light began to flash. Chapter 394. It's broken. I became a substitute. Is he going to stop? Oh my god. How many blessings are there? Can anyone count them? Can you count them? One of the gods suddenly stood up and shouted to the judge in the sky. Mr. Judge, we apply to make public the names and effects of the blessing auras of both parties. Received the audience's application. Please respond to the 3 parties in the duel. Do you agree? Although there are 3 parties in the duel, everyone's eyes are all on Light. After all, the other 2 have just started to deploy troops and summon heroes, and have not yet started to bless the aura. Light thought for a while, and said to Afra, "Tell the judge that we agree to make public the names of the auras and blessings, but forget about the specific descriptions of the effects." Yeah, okay. Afra quickly relayed Light's meaning, and this proposal was quickly agreed by the other 2 parties. The other audiences also expressed their understanding. Agreeing to make the names public is already a very generous decision. If all the contents are really made public, it would be like showing your trump card to the enemy, who has not yet played a card. You definitely can't do that. Then, the gods were completely speechless. Along with the announcement of the judge, a long list fell from the sky to the ground. Because it was too long, a new line was added. Moreover, the judge was very considerate and used red and white gold to distinguish the blessings of the god of flesh and blood and the goddess of holy light. Knife and fork of Poseidon, call of Poseidon, Title surge, desire for flesh and blood, awakening of blood, exuberant blood, the creeping of life, madness expertise, rage expertise death. Resistance devouring, forced digestion, blood frenzy, blood diversion, blood memory, rapid healing, exoskeleton expertise. Hey, what's going on? Why are more than 99% of the blessings bestowed by a Poseidon related to blood and the like? He really is the blood sea Poseidon. Am I the only one who cares about the quantity? This blessing is more than all the gambling fights I've seen combined. Those platinum colored fonts over there should represent the blessing aura of holy light. It's obviously the Poseidon who participated in the battle, but he has the power of other gods. The key is that the judge actually passed it. The gods couldn't help but look at the second half of the second page. The platinum colored font looked much softer. God of light, guardian of light, holy advent, holy praise, blessing of the goddess, ode to the heroic spirit, judgment of light, revenge of light, contract of light, aura of faith, aura of piety, supreme holy glory, blessing of soul, soul stirring, gift of courage, gift of healing, gift of speed. One of the gods had a playful expression. I tell you, this is probably related to the holy earrings on the heads of those followers. It's like two angel holy earrings put together, but there is divine power flowing back and forth. This wonderful structure is really curious. About 10 minutes later, after the opponent's heroic spirit was summoned, they forgot about the halo. Everyone stared at the third page hanging from the sky, and some gods even started to bet whether there would be a fourth page. Obviously, most gods felt that 3 pages were already exaggerated enough, and there would definitely not be a fourth page. And the fact is that when the white gold holy light power stopped flashing, the last halo blessing stopped at the second half of the third page. Many gods breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it didn't exceed. Just when everyone thought it was finally over, the emerald green light began to flicker. Oh my god. How can there be more? Will it ever end? Wait, this feeling of divine power is actually the power of the life god system. That's right, they have the 2 biological daughters of the original god king of the life god system in their god court, and the god king level artifact of the life god system is still in their hands. Ah, is there such a thing? Otherwise, why do you think they are fighting? With the halo of the life power flickering wildly, the list of blessing halos directly broke through the third page and began to write on the fourth page. At the same time, the gods in the audience began to gossip about the root cause of this fight. The old scandal of the life god system sneaking attack on its own god king and then forcing the god king's bloodline away was dug up by everyone again, and it was a good scolding. The overwhelming contemptuous eyes made the life god system unable to raise their heads. They have done so many bad things, but in fact, it is not widely circulated in the god realm. Because the social interaction between gods is not very intensive, many of them focus on their own affairs and are busy every day. Jonah's daily life is the current situation of most gods. Therefore, many inside stories, hidden stories, and wild historical speculations are not known by the gods. Now, in the small circle of the arena, it is concentrated and explosively spread. Everyone knows how many bastard things the remaining group of gods in the life system have done. The reputation collapsed directly, and the public opinion changed instantly. Originally, some gods felt that the life system was quite miserable and had a little sympathy. But as these scandals spread, these sympathies disappeared immediately, and the only thing left was to be happy. About 5 minutes later, the blessing stopped at the end of the fourth list. The 3 kinds of divine halo blessings, a full 4 lists hanging from the sky to the ground, almost covered the entire arena. Looking at such an exaggerated halo blessing, the 2 opposing gods were numb. It feels that, if these blessings were replaced with bricks, they would be enough to build a grave for them. But, since they have finished blessing the aura, it is not good for us to not do anything, right? In desperation, Ravdal of the life god system also began to bless the heroes he summoned. He applied for the first divine descent, and then threw out a disposable artifact like a flower bud. The flower bud bloomed above the heroes, and each petal turned into several blessing halos, covering the heroes below. To be honest, in terms of the number of blessings, the life god system can be considered a lot, but it also depends on who you are comparing with. In less than half a minute, the life god system completed all its blessings. The audience's eyes suddenly became sharp. Wow, looking at it this way, they are so few. After all, they only have the blessing of one pantheon. But even if we compare the blessings of the life pantheons of both sides separately, the life pantheon is far inferior to the holy light pantheon. Their emerald green flash lasted for several minutes. How come it disappeared in the blink of an eye on the side of the genuine life pantheon? That's right, I felt distracted for a moment, and then it passed. Compared like this, I don't know who is the real life pantheon. The Holy Light Pantheon has the daughter of the King of Life, and also has the crown of the King of Gods, with many and powerful blessings. Isn't it obvious who is the fake? For some reason, the discussion in the audience was particularly loud, as if it was deliberately said to the gods of the Life Pantheon. Ravdal was so angry that his face turned pale, and he gnashed with hatred. He suddenly realized that, although the duel had not yet started, the Life Pantheon had already been defeated. But at this point, he could not retreat, let alone hesitate. Arbitrator, I apply to use the second divine gift. Chapter 395, at the cost of social death, asking for monthly ticket. Dear readers, the April Book Friends Circle activity has begun. If you want the fan title, please go to the Book Friends Circle to find the activity post to participate in the activity. Just reply to the word participate. In May, 10 places will be selected from top to bottom according to the book friend value to obtain the fan title. I'll tell you secretly that most of the book friends with high values have received it. If you participate, you have a great chance of getting it. For Ravdal, this battle is a battle that gambles on the future of the entire life pantheon. As long as you can win, then all the losses are worth it. But if you fail to win, the consequences will be unimaginable. Forced to the edge of the cliff, Ravdal applied for the second divine gift from the judge and soon received a prompt that the judgment was passed. At this moment, he was like a desperate wolf, exuding a resolute murderous aura all over his body, and Afra, who stood opposite him, was shocked by the murderous aura of the other party, but still stood firm and straightened her spine. Although this goddess is not very reliable on some issues, she is indeed a god worthy of the believer's trust. The believers below were about to fight. How could he be the first to be afraid? Afra pulled out the sin light that light had nailed in front of him, and his momentum suddenly increased, and he actually fought against the other party. On the contrary, the dragon god emperor, who was still summoning heroes and arranging troops, was inexplicably suppressed, and was very depressed. At this moment, Ravdal took a deep breath, slowly spread his hands, closed his eyes, and raised his head slightly. Then, a green crystal of the godhead emerged from the center of his eyebrows and floated in front of him. Ravdal is a pillar of the life god system, and he is also a veteran rule level strongman. His godhead is surrounded by the rules he created, exuding a powerful divine pressure. Ravdal manipulated the godhead, forcibly extracted most of the divinity from it, and threw it directly into the body of a hero of the life god system in the arena. Such a move immediately made the gods and the audience widen their eyes. They never expected that Ravdal would be so fierce that he actually sacrificed his divinity to a heroic spirit under his command. This is tantamount to suicide for the gods. After all, divinity is the foundation of the existence of gods. The gods ignite the divine fire, and the divinity is the wick that burns the fire. The gods condense the divine nature, and the divinity is the crystal core of the divine nature. Once the divinity is distorted, it will cause the divine fire to sway, and the divine nature to collapse. If the divinity is completely extracted, then the god will die soon. The purpose of gambling is to prevent the gods from fighting to the death due to contradictions, and ultimately causing meaningless gods to fall. After all, it is really not easy for them to become gods after going through all kinds of hardships. For the gods of the kingdom of God, it is an invaluable resource. But now, for the gambling, a god's life has been sacrificed, and it is still a core member of the life god system. It is simply putting the cart before the horse. But the matter is done, and it is too late to say anything. In the arena below, the heroic spirit that received the divine sacrifice was a giant with a huge body. According to legend, the giants are very peculiar. They are born with a strong body, different from any other tribe, and they can drive power from birth, and their strength is extremely strong. Young giants hunt dragons like hunting cattle and sheep, and middle-aged giants are even equivalent to ordinary gods. but their talents and abilities are determined by nature. As long as they can drive the wind after birth, they can only control the wind in this life, and cannot control fire or thunder. People often distinguish them by their abilities, such as frost giants, fire giants, mountain giants, etc. It is rumored that the reason why they are so strong by birth is because they have the blood of the ancient Titan, the eldest son of God, flowing in their bodies. The gods never expected that such a huge monster would be hidden in the Hall of Heroes of the Life God system. After receiving the divine sacrifice, the body of this heroic giant expanded again, and in a blink of an eye it had occupied half of the arena. The majestic aura was overwhelming, and the momentum alone made many gods with low strength tremble. It was obviously a heroic spirit, but it made the gods feel a sense of crisis. Hey, this is a mountain giant. This is already beyond the standard. Even if the gods themselves come down, they may not win. It is rumored that the giants cannot become gods. It seems to be because of the curse, and it seems to be a physical problem. But as they grow older, they are enough to have the strength to kill gods. Now that they have received the sacrifice of divinity, I can't imagine how strong they are. The life god system is worthy of being an ancient god system. The inheritance is rich and profound. This is probably their trump card. I originally thought that the rumor that the giants have Titan blood is a rumor, but now it seems that it is not groundless. But how can we fight it? The other heroic spirits of the life god system were not idle either. They all climbed onto the body of the mountain giant and found a place to settle down. This made the giant heroic spirits, which were originally difficult to deal with, even more powerful and more versatile. This method of warfare is similar to the one Wright used to have the elves hide in the war tree to attack the city. Facing the aggressive enemy, the girls of the Scoletros Knights were not afraid at all. Under the leadership of Helen, the flesh and blood saint and the leader of the knights, they quickly changed their formation to an offensive formation. The mountain giant roared and slapped over. The girls quickly changed their formation to avoid it, and started to attack the opponent's arm at the first time. But at the same time, the heroes hiding in the mountain giant also began to attack, trying to disrupt the battle formation of the knights. Seeing this, Helen opened her sanctuary and activated the effect of the sanctuary. The synergy of all the members of the knights soared rapidly, almost becoming a whole. Under Helen's precise command, the entire knights fought with the mountain giant and the enemies on him like a living thing. Although the enemy was very powerful, they were unable to do anything to them for a while. The gods were amazed. They didn't expect that a group of more than 40 people could improve their coordination to the level of one person. They seemed to share the 5 senses and brains. Their attack, defense, agility and endurance were also concentrated and evenly distributed. This was an unbreakable group without any shortcomings. Although they were still mortals and only had a few holy ranks, with the 5 blessed halos, their strength was enough to deal with ordinary heroic enemies. However, the mountain giant was too big, and for some reason, its size continued to grow as time went by. As its size grew, so did its overall strength. If this continued, the entire arena would be completely occupied by him, and the girls of the knights would have no place to stand. Not to mention, if it continued to improve its strength, they would not be able to keep up with its speed and attack strength. If this continued, they would definitely lose. At the critical moment, Light waved to Afra, the second divine gift. Throw the sword down. Then give orders to the Scoletros Knights. Or recite, Saint Light says so. Chapter 396 Praise the Holy Sin. Darkness covers everything. I will be the last ray of light in the darkness. Use thunder. Shatter the darkness. Accompanied by a magnificent roar, each of the Blood Rose Knights burst into brilliant platinum holy thunder. Their combat effectiveness soared rapidly, and their speed, strength, and defense all ushered in a qualitative leap. Surrounded by holy thunder, they did not dodge or evade, but charged directly, and defeated one of the arms of the mountain giant, and raised the 2 heroes hiding in it. That was a mountain giant, whose arm was as tall as several floors, and was blasted into dust by a single blow. The domineering power made some gods present tremble in their hearts, and they secretly wondered if they could withstand such a fierce blow. This is enough to kill gods. No, it is a power that completely surpasses ordinary gods. In front of these girls, some ordinary gods even feel that they are the challengers. Compared with when they first appeared, the Blood Rose seemed to have been reborn. What kind of strange book is Saint Wright says so? Unexpectedly, there is such a terrible power. What is Saint Wright says? None of the gods present new. Even in the Holy Light Court, the sisters Aphra and Nora only knew that there was such a book, which seemed to record some of Wright's words. Aphra could understand why Wright threw the Holy Sword Synlight to the Scarlet Rose Knights. After all, this holy sword was powerful and did have the power to turn defeat into victory. But why recite Saint Wright says? She didn't know the true meaning. At the scene, only Jonah knew what it meant. As Wright's confidant, Saint Jonah could recite the entire Saint Wright says. Moreover, she also knew how to stimulate the powerful power of Synlight Holy Sword. She also understood what kind of chain reaction would occur when these two things appeared together. Victory is not a problem at all. The problem is whether this arena can still stand after the incident. But there is one thing she is also clear about. That was Wright's true attitude towards Saint Wright says so. Ordinary people would definitely be delighted and welcome the fact that other people helped them write a book and write a biography. But because of the special nature of the content of this book, Wright has always been very cautious. He even secretly used the relationship with the high-level officials of the Holy Light Church to try to erase the book. Unexpectedly, this act of erasure made the book even more popular, and it even became the equivalent of gold. Because too many Holy Light believers liked, and even fanatically obsessed with this book, the high-level officials who issued the erasure task were almost backfired by this order. In the end, the erasure plan was left unfinished. The popularity of this book was so great that Wright, the source, was helpless. This phenomenon once even amazed the devil of lies. But Wright's attitude towards this book was deeply remembered by Jonah. Therefore, this woman who could recite the content of the book and loved it very much never uttered even a word of Saint Wright says so in front of Wright. But today, Wright wants the girls of the Scarlet Rose Knights to sing the contents of this book in such a public place. Jonah reached out and grabbed Wright's wrist, looking at him with some fear and distress. Wright, do you really want to do this? Wright was stunned for a moment, then reached out and hugged Jonah in his arms and whispered softly in her ear. It's okay. But you will feel bad. It will be a little, but I have reasons for doing this. Wright's eyes flashed with a sharp light. He did not hesitate to let the Scarlet Roses sing their dark history loudly, and he also wanted to win with a crushing performance, just to establish his prestige. In front of the gods, to establish prestige. In fact, after the first two bits, the Holy Light Divine Court will inevitably become the most dazzling force in the entire god realm in the near future. The gods will be full of curiosity about this new god court, and will be full of fear. But, it is only fear. After all, the strength of the family is soft power for the gods. And the strength of the gods is the real hard power for the god realm. The followers affect the speed and upper limit of the future development of the god realm, and the strength of the gods determines the survival of the god realm. Just like the current life gods, even if all their followers are downgraded, it will have an impact on them, but it will not hurt their bones. After all, with such a strong power of the god realm, there will be no big problems. If the followers are not good, it will be a problem in the short term. In the long run, they can be replaced or upgraded. But if a god realm force has extremely strong and even terrifying followers, but the gods are a little weak, then it is very likely to become fat meat in everyone's eyes. Even if they don't come to take a bite, they will try their best to curb the development of the other party. After all, such a potential god realm force, once given time to grow, will inevitably become a behemoth like the eternal dragon realm in the future. The cake is so big. Of course, everyone does not want another big eater to emerge. The Holy Light God Court is in such a situation now. They have followers that make the gods salivate, and a private subspace that can be called a treasure land. These are enough to drive any god system crazy. Wright knows the truth, that a man is innocent, but guilty of possessing a treasure. Although there is an extraordinary combat force like Wright in the God Court, plus 2 rule level 1s, the strength is already very good. But with a pack of wolves surrounding them, and being at odds with the Dragon Clan and the god system of life, the environment is not reassuring. As for Lilith and the Devil of Lies, although they are also conceptual level combat forces, they are demons after all. Just like this time, Lilith cannot follow Wright to the god realm. What happens in the future, they may not be able to help. And Wright plans to deal with the Gate of Truth next. What if some blind people take risks and endanger the Holy Light God Court? Even if he can take revenge afterwards, some damage once done is irreversible. Therefore, how to ensure the continued safe development of the Holy Light God Court after the gambling fight has become the top priority. Regarding this point, Wright had already thought about it the night when he and the Devil of Lies prepared for the 3 gambling fights today. The third game after 2 games must be played. Even if the Dragon Clan and the Life God system don't want to fight, Light will force them to fight. Because the one who really needs to play the third game is Light and the Holy Light God Court. Light wants to use this third game to tell all the gods. Even if he, Light, is no longer in the Holy Light God Court, the Holy Light God Court still has the ability to defend itself. That is the Holy Sword Sunlight. We can all become Light. Holy Light God Court. Uplifting and immortal. Saint Sunlight said so. In the Raw. The ultimate light. Blooming in the killing. Chapter 397. A fancy sword. The dazzling white gold holy light gradually dissipated, and the mountain giant had collapsed in the field. Most of his body had been completely vaporized, and the other heroes hiding on him were not spared. Ravdir on the duel stage vomited blood, and fell to the ground with his eyes rolled up. The blow just now made the entire arena tremble. The phantom of the judge in the sky shook for a while, and it took a long time to regain stability. Such power made all gods below the rule level ashamed. Is this the power that a follower can exert? Then if the one holding the holy sword is a god, what kind of terrible fighting power will he exert? If it is the owner of the holy sword, Light, what kind of terrible fighting power will he exert? Holy sword Sunlight trembled all over. It's been too long. It's really been too long. It's been too long since I last had something good. I didn't expect that I would eat so much today. Although these words were said before, at this moment, this scene and this atmosphere, it's so exciting for Holy Sword Sunlight. It trembled, and the sound of the sword seemed to be singing loudly. The pressure that naturally emanated moved many gods above the rule level. The gods were terrified, and their eyes looking at the Holy Light Court changed from curiosity to fear. Wright held the beauty in his arms and looked around, revealing a satisfied smile. This is the effect he wants, to establish the deterrence of the light of sin. This can ensure that when he is entangled in trivial matters and cannot rush to the Holy Light Court in the first time, other forces will not dare to invade the Holy Light Court. At least, they dare not act rashly. Wright tightened his arms triumphantly and looked at Jonah in his arms with a smile. Awesome, my holy sword. Unexpectedly, Jonah suddenly shyly hit him. Oh, in public, what are you talking about? Ahem, I'm talking about my holy sword Sunlight. Oh. Jonah was so embarrassed that her face turned red. She quickly broke free from his arms and ran to the two sisters Nulanoi. In the arena below, the dragons who had been waiting for an opportunity suddenly started to attack. Although they were also shocked by the fighting displayed by the Skolatros Knights, they did not intend to give up. Dozens of heroic dragons roared over, and some were responsible for interfering with Helen and her team members. The remaining heroic dragons actually rushed directly to the mountain giant, which had only half of its body left. Ah! The heroic giant, who was only half a breath away, screamed, because those dragon heroic spirits actually drilled into his body like parasites. Such a horrifying scene forcibly pulled the gods and the audience out of the deterrence of the holy sword Sunlight. What are these dragons doing? Why are they attacking the heroic spirits of the life god system? Aren't they allies? Even if it's to add insult to injury, you can't do this, right? That's not an ordinary dragon. Some gods who have a deeper understanding of the dragons saw the clues of the matter. Those are gem dragons. Gem dragons? I've only heard of eternal dragons, legendary dragons, metallic dragons, and chromatic dragons. Yeah, what are gem dragons? The older god laughed. You are really short-sighted. Among the dragons, the most powerful are the legendary dragons. They are mysterious and rare. Many people have only heard of their names, but have never seen them. The most common ones are metallic dragons like bronze dragons and gold dragons, or chromatic dragons like red dragons and green dragons. But in addition to these, the dragon clan also has many small varieties of dragons. Gem dragons are one of the larger branches. For example, topaz dragons, crystal dragons, diamond dragons, emerald dragons, etc. They coexist with minerals full of strange energy, and their abilities are all kinds of strange, but they should not be underestimated. Gem dragons plus mountain giants. This is indeed a good combination. Although it causes great damage to mountain giants, it is a huge improvement in ability. I suspect that this may very well be the killer move that the two families discussed before. Indeed, in Ravdal's original plan, the means of winning the third round was to use the fusion of the mountain giant and the gem dragon. But after the first 2 rounds, he realized that the normal plan would not work at all. So he sacrificed his divinity to make the mountain giant get an epic enhancement. Unfortunately, it was still no match for the Skoletros mercenary group holding the holy sword Synlight, and the dragon clan had planned to take advantage from the beginning, using gem dragons as inlays to enhance the strength of the mountain giant. The mountain giant was in control, but now the gem dragons are in control of eroding the remains of the mountain giant. Dragon clan, what do you want to do? Ravdal stood up, holding the fence of the duel stage, and asked angrily. Unexpectedly, the dragon god emperor sneered. What? Of course, it's to win the battle for you. Don't worry, when we win, we will sell you what you want at a reasonable price. Moreover, we can also accept the equivalent of god coins for your lost bits. So, just sit there and watch carefully. Shameless. Shameless. The gods of the life god system were furious. They stared at the dragon god emperors of the dragon clan, but they could do nothing. This group of dragons betrayed their faith and would cause huge losses to the entire life god system. But now, they are also looking forward to it, looking forward to their victory. Because if the dragon clan wins, everything can be saved. Isn't it just god coins? Even if they are bitten hard, everyone can still earn it back from countless inferior worlds that are shepherded. That is, at that time, scrape harder and squeeze more cleanly. Let the believers in the lower world suffer, and whoever wants to bear the infamy will bear it. But if they are defeated by the Holy Light Temple, they will be completely finished. And looking at the opponent's development momentum, it is hard to say who will be the real life god system in the future. When the orthodoxy is lost, it will be the real end of the road. Therefore, even if the mountain giant spirits are wailing, and the dragons are acting recklessly, they can only watch. Soon, all the gem dragons were filled into the body of the mountain giant. Its size became larger, and half of its body made of rocks turned into gems of various colors, and its strength was once again improved. Such a behemoth, that is a mixture of the dragon clan and the life god system, let out a painful wail again, and rushed towards the Skoletros knights who were ready to go. However, at this time, Wright snapped his fingers at Afra on the stage. What are you daydreaming about? Hurry up and apply for the next god's gift, and then swipe the card, to end this meaningless war. Chapter 398. The brilliance of that knife. Afra was suddenly called by Wright and was also startled. She was just immersed in the content of Saint Wright as sung by the Skoletros knights. Strangely, after listening to these words, she felt that she had a new understanding of the Holy Light Law. Since she was promoted to a rule level god, she was very confused and lost her direction. The promotion of the rule level is like climbing stairs. As long as you take one step at a time, you will be rewarded if you work hard. But the promotion of the rule level is like rock climbing with bare hands. Not only is it more dangerous, but the difficulty is also a qualitative leap. Just when she was extremely confused about the way of holy light, Saint Wright says gave her new inspiration. Could it be that her own path to promotion is in this book? For a moment, Afra was a little confused about who was the god and who was the believer. However, the downtime of her brain did not delay her actions. She immediately submitted a divine gift application to the judge, and the latter also approved her third divine gift. Then, she pulled out the next card from the deck that Wright gave her. There was still no pattern or description on it, only one word, crimson. The moment the card was dropped, a crimson light enveloped the entire knight group. The girl's already bright red flesh and blood weapons were stained with a layer of strange red light. The murderous aura, at this moment, spread wildly, filling the entire arena, and the Synlight greatsword in the hands of Knight Commander Helen was directly split into two, becoming two murderous swords. Facing the attacking gem mountain giant, Helen was almost completely swallowed up by the murderous aura. There was only madness in her eyes. Only killing. Only the desire for blood and slaughter. The most extreme emotions, transformed into unmatched power, were all poured into the two long swords. Wright stood in front of the arena and shouted loudly in the opposite direction. "Hey, run. It's thundering. Collect your clothes. If you don't run, be careful that we will all be killed." The arena was built by several extremely powerful rule level gods. It has never been heard that an accident occurred, causing injuries to the audience and the audience. But at this moment, the murderous intent that almost turned into substance has seeped out of the defensive barrier and spread deep in the hearts of every god. Even if they don't believe it, they dare not gamble with their lives. The gods scattered and tried their best to turn into divine light and escape from the audience. But the giant in the arena didn't have such good luck. The half dragon and half giant who was so arrogant just now was now suppressed to the ground by the murderous intent and couldn't move. The girls chanting before seemed to be just to make the holy sword SYNOPSIS enter a certain state of excitement. And now, it will bloom its brilliance. Wright put his hands on the railing and gave an order with a cold expression. "Kill him." The light words were like a death warrant. All members of the Blood Rose were shocked, and then followed the leader's action, slashing forward with both hands. Two crimson swords burst out from the blades, crushing the giant like a mountain. Clang. With a clear and pleasant sound of metal collision, the bloody sword passed through the body, and then continued to move, directly cutting a huge gap in the audience seats of the arena. The mountain giant on the field seemed to be completely destroyed by this blow, and his whole body began to turn into dust. In a blink of an eye, it flew away, and not even a small stone was left. After the sword was slashed, all the members of the Blood Rose Knights were exhausted, and fell to the ground one by one. Seeing this, Afra quickly raised the half scepter in her hand and frantically poured the holy light mantra on them to help them stabilize their physical condition. At least when it comes to treating believers, the holy light goddess is still very attentive. Because most of the arena was destroyed, the shadow of the judge in the sky flickered and slowly dissipated. The gambling fight ended in this way, or it could be said that it ended in vain. Wright on the stage raised his hand, and the holy sword SYNOPSIS flew back to his hand. Even though it was full, it was still trembling, and it seemed very excited. Wright held it and knocked it against his forehead, and it gradually calmed down. After taking it back, Wright put his hands behind his back and looked at the life god system and the dragon clan with a smile. "So, you two, the gambling fight is over. I believe you have no objection, right?" The entire arena was silent. None of the gods present, including the dragon clan and the gods of the life god system, felt that there was any objection to the issue of victory or defeat, and no god was worried that the two families would default on this bet. What a joke. Default. Please look at the end of the arena before thinking about this question. Whoever dares to default, the next time he shows up at his door with this holy sword, it will be Wright himself. Money has to be spent with life. Faced with this result, regardless of the life god system, the dragon clan was relieved. They suddenly stopped worrying about the dragon slayer's lament being in Light's hands. After all, with this holy sword called SYNOPSIS, what does it matter whether the dragon slayer's lament is in his hands or not? On the other hand, it is the best result if it is in his hands. At least, it is better than him giving the dragon slayer's lament to someone else. At that time, the threat of the holy light court to the dragon clan would not be reduced in the slightest, and there would be another extremely threatening enemy. Forget it, just keep it in his hands. Several dragon emperors of the dragon clan even began to calculate how much benefits they should give in order to let Light keep the dragon slayer's lament and prevent others from getting it. After discussing it, they suddenly realized that this was just paying protection fees. However, the dragon clan had already paid protection fees before. It was the authorization issue of the dragon clan dungeon. Now think about it, the protection fee paid at that time is not even a fraction of the loss plus the bet of the dragon clan in this fight. Therefore, the dragon clan went through so much trouble, humiliated themselves, and gave money and artifacts, and their shops were robbed because of it. What's the purpose? At that moment, the dragon emperors really wanted to travel back, find themselves before the fight, slap them hard, and ask them, what's the purpose of going through so much trouble? Is it a masochism? Then, hand over the bet. Ravdal of the life god system slowly climbed up while enduring the pain. He looked at the gods behind him, then wiped the blood from his mouth, and took a deep breath. Of course, no problem. But for the royal garden, please choose a day to go to the god system of life to pick it up in person. Wright frowned slightly. Oh. Ravdal waved his hands quickly. We are not deliberately making things difficult for you. It is really the handover of the territory of the god realm, and the procedures are cumbersome. Moreover, the god system of life also hopes that Mr. Wright will come. We had something to discuss with you in detail. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399 Holy Light Industrial Park. When the gods left the arena, they looked dazed. They stood outside the arena, looking at the vast world of God, and for a moment they felt as if they were in another world. Everything that had just happened seemed like a dream, but the huge gap in the arena and the ruins on the ground seemed to deliberately remind them that all this was really happening. After this fight, the Holy Light Divine Court will be completely promoted to the first line forces in the Divine Realm. This is probably the only Divine Realm force that has been promoted to this level as a Divine Court since ancient times. But these are not important. What is important is that as the news spreads, the Divine Realm will reach a consensus. Don't provoke the Holy Light Divine Court for no reason. Unless you want to cede land like the Life God system, and also want to pay compensation like the Eternal Dragon Realm. Although the fight was over, the third bet was not received immediately. Instead, early the next morning, a very luxurious carriage stopped at the gate of the Holy Light Divine Court. The servant of the driver brought a group of holy elves to the Divine Court, and knelt on one knee in front of Wright and others. Respected Mr. Wright, and all the gods of the Holy Light Court. The Life God system sincerely invites you to the God's domain of the Life Court, to discuss the session of the Royal Garden. In the God realm, there is no such concept as enclave. Because the regional territory in the God's domain can be directly cut and spliced like a puzzle. In the third gambling fight, the Holy Light Court undoubtedly won the final victory. According to the bet, the Life Court needs to cede Nalinoi's former home, the private royal garden of King Liang, to the Holy Light Court. After this session is completed, Wright and others can bring this piece of land back directly and put it in the current domain of the Holy Light Court. Of course, the Holy Light Court basically has no domain now, only a palace. But if this royal garden is brought back, then the transformation from a small office building to an industrial park will be completed. At that time, the activity space of the Holy Light Court will not only be greatly improved, but the living environment will also be qualitatively improved. After all, it was the royal garden of the ancient god system of life. The luxury and area were simply unbelievable. What are you waiting for? Let's go. Wright was really impatient now. He had wanted to improve the environment for the Holy Light Temple for a long time. The larger temple of the Holy Light Temple not only had to accommodate 4 gods, but also so many angels, which seemed extremely crowded. Take Afra and Jonah for example. As the leaders of the temple and the main gods of the Holy Light world, their residences were just a room in the temple. Nora and Noi were even worse off. They still lived in the same small room. That's why they subconsciously thought of the royal garden at that time. Wright, who knew this problem well, agreed at the first time. Let's go. Wright stood beside the carriage and helped Nora and Noi get on the carriage. I'll take you back home in glory. Nora and Noi's eyes were slightly red when they heard this, but their faces were full of smiles. They never expected that they would be treated so well today. After choosing to come to the big family of the Holy Light Court, Wright and his friends not only found their father's relics, but also brought back the moon crown. Not only that, Wright also avenged their father's death, and severely taught the white-eyed wolves of the Life God system a lesson. Now, he can take them back to the place that once bullied them, and return the humiliation. Nora and Noi's sense of belonging to the Holy Light Court has reached a new height at this moment. They snuggled up to Jonah like 2 well-behaved little sisters. The wheels turned, and the carriage took off into the air, quickly leaving the Holy Light domain, and heading towards the God's domain of the God system. Unlike the 13 realms of the demon realm and the abyss, the god's domain of the god realm is a small area of loose pieces. Rather than being a domain, it is more like a cloud. The space of the god's domain in a small cloud is small, and the space in a large cloud is vast and boundless. As long as small clouds are put together, they can form a large cloud. But after so many years of development, all the clouds in the god realm are basically owned by someone. If you want to expand your territory, you can either buy it with god coins or use other means to seize the clouds in other god realms. Not long after, the carriage arrived at the destination. Wright and others got off the car, and what came into view was a magnificent royal garden. This is taking us directly to our destination. Wright looked around. I thought that the life god system would show some hospitality and take us on a tour of the entire life god system's divine domain. Afra approached him and said faintly, I think they might be afraid. Afraid? Why should they be afraid? They are afraid that you will take a fancy to other good things in their house. And then Wright's face was full of depression, and he reached out and knocked Afra's forehead. You are not afraid of thieves stealing, but you are afraid of thieves thinking about it, right? Do I look like that kind of person? Afra rubbed her forehead and pouted. They think so, not me. Mr. Wright, and all the distinguished guests, several adults from our life god system are waiting inside. Let me lead the way for you. The old servant smiled and immediately turned around and pushed open the gate of the garden. Wright and his companions followed the old servant under the protection of the holy elves through the vast garden and stopped in front of magnificent palace. Along the way, Wright had a general idea of the size of this royal garden. It's called a garden, but the area of this place is very large, almost as big as a capital city. No wonder Adel agreed to use this place as a bet with a sad face. It's really big. Such a vast area, I think it can be planned into an industrial park. Wright has already outlined the future development blueprint in his mind. Our business will take off here. After all, it is a waste to use such a large place as a garden. We must enable them to have the ability to turn waste into treasure and continuously output wealth. Oh. Then what are you going to do specifically? I haven't thought about it yet. Wright clenched his fists. We can bid. Introduce other gods to invest, and we will use the site as a share. Afra pondered for a moment. This is indeed a good idea. Wow, you are really thinking about it seriously. I thought you were joking. Wright snorted coldly. Grazing and harvesting faith are all outdated ways of playing. What's the fun of harvesting believers? We have to harvest the gods. Everyone. Several adults from the life god system are waiting inside. The old servant stood at the door and made a gesture of invitation. Please come in. Chapter 400. This is retribution. Pushing open the door of the parliament, Wright saw a long table in the hall. One side of the table was full of people, while the other side was empty. Obviously, this was prepared for them. Noah and Nora seemed to see an acquaintance and looked a little scared. But under Jonah's encouraging eyes, they quickly adjusted their state and stood behind Wright with their heads held high. Wright looked at this posture and smiled slightly. You are here with bad intentions. Afra whispered in his ear. You are the one who is here. Let's go and sit over there. Wright was not at all restrained. He walked into the hall with Jonah and others and sat on the other side of the long table. After everyone sat down, the god Ravdal, the head of the life system, stood up and bowed deeply to Wright. Ravdal, on behalf of the entire life god system, welcomes all the friends of the Holy Light God Court. Your presence here is a real honor to us. Wright held his cheek and looked at him and suddenly laughed. I say, Ravdal, you are so seriously injured. Why don't you soak in the juice of the world tree to recuperate? Can't you leave such a small matter as discussing things to others? Ravdal laughed and then coughed. He calmed down for a while and then looked at Wright with lingering fear. Mr. Wright is joking. If I lie on the bed and rest, let others take over this matter. What if they accidentally offend you and cause the life god system and the Holy Light God Court to be at odds with each other? That would be bad. Although our life god system is quite wealthy, we really can't afford such generous compensation as before. TSK. Wright was very unhappy. His idea of making another killing was actually seen through by someone. It seems that I was too murderous and my disguise was not good enough. Okay, no need to be polite. You insisted that we come here in person to do the handover, and you said you have something to ask. What is it? The gods of the life system looked at each other for a few seconds, and finally cast their eyes on Ravdal. The latter sighed, and stood up tremblingly with the help of his companions. Then, under the shocked gaze of Afra and others, he bowed deeply to the two sisters Nora. Princess Nora, I'm sorry. Mr. Ravdal, you, listen to me. Ravdal sighed. At the beginning, there was a dispute within the life god system over the issue of grazing by the gods. The trigger point was that the first generation of the ancient life tree had a fatal flaw. This flaw caused the laws of life in the world, grazed by the life god system, to be distorted and affected by the ancient life tree, which eventually led to the tragedy of the fall of the world. At that time, many gods in the god system advocated reform to eliminate this hidden danger. But most gods thought it was no big deal, so they took a negative attitude. Your father, Lord Liang, decided to develop the second generation of the god tree of life for the long-term development of the god system. He promised the gods in the life god system that the newly developed second generation of the ancient life tree would be more effective and have more functions than the first generation, and would also eliminate all hidden dangers. In this way, the life god system not only got rid of the shadow of destroying the world, but also could be further strengthened. Everyone is very confident in your father's plan, and the entire pantheon has poured all its resources into the plan for the second generation tree of life. When Ravdal said this, Wright suddenly raised his hand. Wait a minute, let me guess what's going to happen next. The huge investment made by the god of life this time, which was like a bet on the fate of the country, finally paid off. The second generation of the god of life tree was successfully developed. This is an exciting thing. But soon, after the preliminary experiments, you found that this so-called second generation of god of life tree was not as good as you imagined. Although it eliminated some of the shortcomings of the first generation of god of life tree, it would no longer affect the law of life in the grazing world, let alone destroy the grazing world. However, its function and efficiency were lower than the first generation of god of life tree. No, it should be far lower. Therefore, there was a disagreement within your god system about whether to use the second generation of god of life tree to replace the first generation. Am I right? Ravdal nodded slightly. Your guess is absolutely correct. The whole project went very smoothly, and we successfully developed the second generation of the ancient tree of life. It is perfect, but it is far behind the first generation in terms of efficacy. We initially thought that there were design defects, or the process needed to be upgraded. But after careful investigation, we came to a discouraging conclusion. The efficiency of the second generation of god of life tree is truly normal. On the contrary, the reason why the first generation is more efficient than the second generation is that it is based on the distortion of the world's laws. In other words, the high production capacity of the first generation comes at the cost of destroying the world. Even if the second generation is optimized to absolute perfection, it is impossible to exceed the production capacity of the first generation. Therefore, the two sides have a conflict over whether to continue to promote the second generation or continue to use the first generation for production capacity, and a fierce conflict has broken out. His Majesty the King of the Sun, who advocates renewal, personally participated in the grazing behavior in order to prove his point and went to the world you are currently ruling, preparing to upgrade the life tree there to the second generation. As a result, this is a carefully set up scam by the opposition to lure the King of the Sun into the trap and then surround and kill him. The defenseless King of the Sun died in hatred under the ambush of the opposition. I think you all know what happened next. At this point, Nora and Noi were already crying and couldn't stop. Wright tapped his fingers on the table, and his eyes swept back and forth across the faces of the life gods opposite. Then you came to us today, probably because of the matter of the tree of life. Otherwise, you wouldn't take the initiative to bring this guilty matter out on the table. Okay, I don't have time to watch you pretending. Let's talk about the matter directly. Mr. Wright, can we rent the crown of the King of the Fiery Sun? No. Wright rejected the other party without hesitation. No way. Don't look at the two sisters Nora. I say this not only for them, because I hope to see you in big trouble. This is the retribution you deserve for destroying so many worlds. Especially you. Knowing that the first generation of the Tree of Life will destroy the grazing world, you still continue to use them. This kind of deliberate evil cannot be forgiven, let alone condoned. You should be glad that I didn't know about this 3 years ago. Otherwise, with my temperament at that time, humph. Raftel covered his face and cried, Mr. Wright, our life god system has suffered the retribution you mentioned. We are hated by the world tree. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.